morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the rest of you. Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. I'm your host, Q, coming to you yet again from my mother's basement, and I'm joined by my co-host, P. How goes it, P?
It goes fantastically, as always. Let's get into it, man.
Let's dive right in. It's a jam-packed episode. We're going to kick things off with some news and notes. We'll have Guy Swann joining us in about 30 minutes. And then, of course, we'll be wrapping with Jimmy's song at the last hour of today's stream. First things first, FIRESALE did not get the spot ETF approved. Surprise to nobody except for me, I guess.
How could they do this to us?
Look, they still have the ETF that shorts Bitcoin that's still trading, but no, you can't have a spot ETF. Grayscale immediately responded in like less than 30 minutes saying that they're going to file a lawsuit against the SEC's decision. This is a developing story. That's pretty much all we have at this moment. Just stay tuned. Keep your eyes out on Twitter and any other news outlets, especially one and only Bitcoin Magazine, for updates on that developing story.
One thing to point out, you mentioned the short ETF. The reason that has been approved is because it is based on the futures contract, and what is trying to be approved now is a spot contract, as I understand it.
Correct. And then thank you, Chris, for pointing it out that Europe will be getting a spot ETF in July. I believe both Canada and Australia have already approved their versions of a spot ETF at this point. So, yeah. Tell me your country wants to regulate and control your monetary system more than America. Like, slide into my DMs. Tell me how miserable your country is, because I'm taking applications for my future citizenship at this point. Let's actually, continue to hammer home and pick on America and Alex McShane's company, or Alex McShane lookalike Brian Armstrong's company, Coinbase. Apparently, Coinbase has been providing geo-tracking data to ICE.
This is so fucked up.
Look, I brought this up on the show, I believe 2 weeks ago, how the Supreme Court made a ruling for Border Patrol to have some pretty aggressive abilities to essentially be able to go into anyone's home that is 100 miles from a border. In my interpretation, completely destroying my Fourth Amendment rights. And here is ICE, a company that has notoriously used data to go after illegal immigrants. Regardless of your feelings on that, a government agency being given data of any individuals or citizens is dangerous in my mind. It's a very, very slippery slope. But I also want to play the other side of the coin for a hot second. This is the article. This is the headline I will forever send to all of my friends who ever throw the FUD of, well, Bitcoin's used by drug dealers and sketchy people, and it's malicious and bad people use it. I'm like, yeah, ICE, the way they use the data to track where you are based on what you buy and when. So I hope that piece of FUD dies. It won't. I'm just trying to shoot up some hopium at 10 a.m. Pacific time here on a Thursday morning, but we're slowly losing rights, and some of it is being broadcast out wide, and some of it is happening very quietly and subtly. And it is not just enough to be aware of it or just talk about it. We need to sound the alarms and bang the drum, because they just keep taking inch by inch from us. And why would they stop? I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic here, but this doesn't sit well with me. And just like that, P's very poignant point was muted.
You're absolutely right. We will continue to see our rights eroded over time, as we have seen. There's a long history of this kind of behavior, and until we, or rather, in order to stop this, we have to take responsibility for our own, sovereignty with regard to our data. There's a lot of tools that you can use. there's a lot of ways that you can increase your personal privacy. You can kind of attack it at various levels using VPNs, using applications that don't track your location and things like that, using different phone. God, what's the term? But basically, like instead of using iOS, you can use things like Calyx. It can be very daunting, but it's a broad spectrum, and anything you're going to take baby steps to increase your personal privacy. And I would encourage everyone to start looking into that. Matt Odell is a fantastic advocate for this. Puts out a lot of great content on this, but we got to do it.
Definitely. And I know he always recommends Bitcoiner.guides. Bitcoin Q&A did an awesome privacy guide. And I think it's episode 42 or 47 of Citadel Dispatch, where he had Bitcoin Q&A, and they basically go through all the ways to be self-sovereign and to interact with Bitcoin privately. I think it's a really good episode. And if you're looking for more insights, they do like a 2.5 hour, 2 hour rip of like how to get non-KYC Bitcoin, how to transact privately. I think it's very, very good. Go ahead,
What's
Q.
next?
Let's hammer on to the next one. I'm just trying to pull up the story. Another Supreme Court ruling, West Virginia versus the EPA. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of West Virginia to limit the use of energy based on Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act. This is a victory for Bitcoin mining. It remains to be seen how this will actually be enacted. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, this essentially gives states the right to determine how they see or how they want to adhere to EPA policies.
Muted again, P.
Also, I want to just throw this little tidbit that literally every time I ever hear the EPA be thrown around in any capacity, in gesture and seriousness, I immediately think of the Simpsons movie, where the EPA was like the butt of the joke of like being the worst, least important government agency out there. So just wanted to share my thoughts.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of things that it makes sense, or sorry, let me rephrase. There are a very limited number of things that it makes sense for the federal government to regulate at a federal level, and the majority of things should be controlled by individual states. That's why we have this federated system. That's the whole idea behind it. And the problem is that while this may sound like a good idea, people say like, but don't you care about the environment? Like, don't you want the environment to be safe? And the answer is, of course we do. But what ends up happening when you try to put these things in place is that they are not actually there to do that. We have problems like regulatory capture. Basically, the regulations end up serving the interests of the companies that are financially behind these things, and so it ends up just being terrible. So I think this is fantastic. I think this is a great thing, and I think by allowing individual states to set their own policies and regulations around this, we will actually see things improve, because instead of it being like, this specific industry has successfully lobbied to lock this thing down so that they can make the most money, it will be a freer system.
Yeah, and I can actually go ahead, Q.
I want to push back on something there, P. I think you're assuming that lobbyists didn't have an influence on this. And yes, I'm saying this being a Supreme Court ruling where we're supposed to believe that there are no political decisions being made. I want to play devil's advocate for a second, because my concern genuinely is that, like, I live in Los Angeles. The air in Los Angeles is most of the time not healthy enough to actually go outside and breathe. Like, just you come to LA. Come to LA.
Sure.
Q, you brag about how nice LA is. So
Let me finish the point I'm trying to make. Let me finish the point I'm trying to make. This is like a very liberal minded, like, this is purely from gas emissions from cars, not even factories or businesses that are amplifying that. My concern is what we see in LA will become like best case scenario. And I'm telling you, that is not acceptable.
Interesting.
If LA is the best case scenario, that is an unacceptable result of this, in my opinion, based on my experience of living in this environment for almost 30 years now.
Interesting.
And I do think that businesses, like, look, I don't think carbon credits are legit. I don't think there have ever been a proper way in which we have measured emissions or said, hey, this is helping or hurting. And I think a better focus on how can we properly measure our impact would probably be a lot better suited and help us in the long run versus just do whatever the fuck you want. Because the last time we did whatever the fuck we wanted, it wasn't exactly the best. But that's just my 2 cents.
I got 2 points, and I'll let P hop in here. I think so I guess Q, to your point, like LA is the best case scenario, but you're also not factoring in population. Like LA is one of the more densely populated places. I mean, I think in Manhattan,
It's so spread out. It's not as densely populated as you think. LA is a very wide city. We do not build up like Manhattan. We build out and wide. Like that's why where I live in this suburb, like people are like, wait, that's LA. I'm like, dude, LA County is massive.
I guess it's a lot of people, and I guess how you define densely crowded is one way or the other. So there is a lot of people in that general area, though, if you're looking at concentration. Maybe not on top of each other, but at least a lot of people in that one area. I know the one thing that my old job when I was working in waste to energy, one of the Clean Air Act or the Clean Water Act, I forget which one, in the 90s, they had a new regulation that came out that was kind of harmful for all industries. It was done, obviously, to try and protect people and communities. And what they were trying to do is the newest technology and the best, quote unquote, best technology on the market is what should be used going forward for emissions. Basically, so to put this in context, we wanted to do an upgrade to our air pollution control equipment for our facilities for the waste energy that we were running. And what we were trying to do was we were trying to upgrade a facility that normally netted about $1 million or $2 million in revenue. But the best technology cost about $100 million to enact. So our company's like, we're not putting this in. They're like, well, you have to because it's the best technology. It's like, if we put this in, we're closing down the plant. And they're like, and when we said that, immediately the government regulators were like, what do you mean you're going to close down the plant? I'm like, 100 people are going to lose their jobs and it's going to be your fault because you're saying that we have to do this thing. It's like we were trying to improve the air pollution control marginally. They wanted us to improve it exponentially. But the improvement of the air pollution control that we wanted to do, this marginal one, would be still better for the environment. But the EPA was arguing with us saying you have to do the best in class. But if you do the best in class for everything, like we're not an ExxonMobil, we're not, we weren't these big conglomerates that have tons of money to do this. So it's like we either close down the plant, we leave it exactly the same, or we do a marginal improvement. And they wanted like the best in class, and we're like, we can't afford that. And like I think that's kind of lost on regulars sometimes, that like they're trying to go after the ExxonMobils, and I'm not even trying to paint them in bad light, but they think everyone's Amazon, Microsoft, ExxonMobil. It's like, no, like our company, like our revenue is a couple hundreds of million across all of our facilities, like company profits. So it's like if we're reinvesting in it, if we put 100 million, that's like a fifth of our company's profits basically. So it's kind of hard when they're like, they didn't want the best in class, and it's like we want to do like the midway point. You know what I mean? Like it needs an improvement. We want to do the midway. They're like, you have to do the best in class. So I guess that's just given the context of the coming from the energy sector.
Makes sense. I hear you. I also want to be clear. This isn't like there's no regulation. It's just giving states the right to decide what the regulation should be.
Yeah.
Well, if anything, it's taking the authority of the EPA and just saying like, yeah, the EPA sucks and just don't listen to them. That's my interpretation of it. And like my Simpsons loving side of me, like just kind of laughs at that. All I'm saying is if you hated wearing a mask during COVID, you're going to hate wearing a mask when the air is unbreathable. But that's just my 2 cents on it. Next story is the EU tried to enact the travel rule discouraging the use of unhosted wallets and any transactions greater than 1,000 euros must be reported to their version of the IRS for tracking purposes. Love to see it. Love to see this.
Yeah, I'll post the thread on in the chats, but it's unclear. It was like a council of like 20 people that met to try and act this. It like doesn't seem like it's law, but if their proposal goes through in 18 months, that's what's going to happen. And it was just very weird wording. But yeah, they're trying to push through unhosted wallets. They mean using your own wallet, own cold storage or hot storage that you control, not an entity. P, go ahead.
I think I just want to take a brief moment to point out that the use of language here. The term unhosted wallet is the dumbest fucking thing ever. It is clearly designed to make it sound reasonable for these entities to control access to your financial funds. And I think it's so important that we just like reframe this and kind of acknowledge what's actually going on here. It is insane that we live in a world where you can propose the idea that you should not have control of your money. Like, it would be like if we were a spacefaring civilization, which we will be at some point in the future. I hope to be alive when that happens. And you weren't allowed to like carry your own oxygen tanks. Like, it was like, you have to use oxygen tanks that are fully regulated. Well, the idea of regulating oxygen tanks for safety, maybe that makes sense. But the idea that like you have to be able to track oxygen usage and all this crazy stuff on a personal level would be kind of similar. Like, money is this fundamental thing that we need in order to, when I say money, I mean like a way to store and then transact in value. And it just is so crazy to me that we live in a time when it is just socially acceptable to even talk about restricting that like for your safety. It's wild. Q, what do you think?
Safety.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Also, like, the whole point of Bitcoin is so that we literally don't give these idiots any control, say, or power over our own money, because that's more or less what led us here. Also, okay, I had this thought last night, and it like kept me up all night, and I don't really want to talk about this other news story, so I want to talk about this idea that I had last night. And it goes off of our conversation yesterday with Ben, where I kind of presented the question to UP of, would you rather enter a Great Depression or have a class war? And
those are the only two options.
those are the only two options. And I had this thought, and hear me out. It starts weird. I may or may not have tried to write an article. I'm like, I don't think Bitcoin Magazine will actually publish this. So instead, I'm going to say it out loud.
Say the quiet part out loud.
Are Bitcoiners Thanos? Like, have you guys seen, you guys know Thanos' like motivations, right?
No, Bitcoiners are the opposite of Thanos.
Well, don't spoil the ending, bro. But like, there is this, desire for Bitcoiners to see the world crumble. And part of it is the talk that Jordan Peterson gave has never left my mind, where, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he essentially alluded to, and if you haven't seen the Jordan Peterson speech, check it out. It's on our YouTube channel. He more or less alludes to this idea that to make a drastic shift or change, that comes at a cost. And while we may not recognize what those costs are today, when we look back, we will see what costs there were. And it's kind of like that scene where Thanos is talking to young Gamora, and she's like, did you accomplish it? What did it cost? And he's like, everything. And I say that to say, I don't actually believe Bitcoiners are Thanos. I actually genuinely believe that central banks, the EU, their behavior is more in line actually with Thanos. And what Bitcoiners are doing is more in line with what, Captain America and the Avengers actually did. And ultimately, like, did the Avengers got in trouble during that whole, ignore everything after Infinity War and Endgame, like whatever, just that first iteration, those characters were getting in trouble for destroying cities and tearing it down just to save people's lives. And that's in essence what I believe is happening now, is we're getting in trouble because we accidentally bumped into a building and like wrecked a building and maybe had a few casualties as a result. But the larger picture was we're trying to save the fucking world from evil, and the evil being the central bankers. But because the central bankers kind of control everything, they're able to depict and make us think that, oh, actually the Avengers, i.e. Bitcoiners, are bad guys.
This is a very tortured analogy. I'm not going to lie to you. But,
okay, fine. I was really, really high, couldn't fall asleep, and I was like, this makes sense in my head.
But what I will say is I actually reject the idea that like Bitcoiners are one thing. I think that Bitcoin is a tool, and there are many different types of people who can, basically everyone. It's for everyone. Bitcoin is for everyone. Bitcoin is for people who you fundamentally disagree with. And that to me is the most powerful thing about it. You'll hear people say Bitcoin is for enemies. The whole idea, to your earlier point, Q, is that it's about disintermediating the transfer of value. So you don't need anyone to stand in between you and your counterparty when you make an agreement and you want to transact. And so there's a lot of other aspects of Bitcoin, obviously, but there isn't one group. It's not like, Bitcoin maximalists and other people, and they identify as, in your analogy, Thanos or Captain America. It's like there's a million different types of people who can and should use Bitcoin. And that's a wonderful thing. So but I guess what I would say is let's be more specific when we're saying like it's this type of person that is separate from like the like Bitcoiners, I think it does us a disservice. But I do know what you're getting at.
I mean, look, was I stoned out of my mind? Absolutely. Could I fall asleep? No. Did I genuinely get up out of bed and start typing this outline out and thinking, hey, this could be a really fun op-ed for Bitcoin Magazine? Yes. Will I submit it to Casey and the op-ed team? Fuck no.
I thought you were going to say 100%. Yes, it's happening. I'm hitting the button now.
Shout out Kingston. Appreciate you, brother. And everyone who's on my side of this argument. This will be remembered. We will revisit this Avengers analogy one day. I promise you. When we have higher production quality, it could like maybe have the rights to some of these Avengers characters.
Wow, that is. Look,
that's a tall order.
I'm here for it, man.
We're in a bear market too. This is the bull market dreams.
Wait, but let's keep going. What else? What else we got in terms of news and notes? Q's done an amazing job of like keeping us on track. I'm trying to like circle back around and.
Let's do the Bank of International Settlements. They propose letting banks hold 1% of reserves in Bitcoin. I don't know more details beyond that, so it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. It will be speculative conversation at this point, but that is such a validating mark, in my opinion, that banks would want to hold Bitcoin. And if a majority of them do actually move forward with this, that whole idea of it's not going to be our lifetime, we're not going to see a pure Bitcoin standard, but we'll see a basket. You'll see Bitcoin as well as gold, as well as some other stuff, oil. I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you wheat. Like, I know it expires, but wheat will become, mark my words, save this part of the tape. Tino, Andrea, cut this portion. China will buy Sri Lanka, not with money, not with gold, not with oil, but with wheat. They will literally buy the country out of debt with wheat.
Not everything is about wheat, Q.
I cannot wait to roll that tape back one day.
This is huge, though. I mean, yeah. Or I should say, this seems huge. I haven't read the story in detail, but the headline sounds very significant. I wonder how this will actually play out, though. What does it mean for the Bank of International Settlements to recommend a course of action? Where does that actually lead us? What does this actually mean in practical terms? I'm not sure, but it certainly sounds very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a developing story, so it will just be very interesting to see how it pans out.
So, Q, I've been meaning to ask you, for the audience, the way that a futures contract works is you are engaging in a contract to either buy or sell an underlying commodity at the price that the contract is purchased or sold. So you can basically lock in a price. They were originally created to help producers and consumers of goods on a larger scale, basically be able to more effectively hedge against changes in prices. And so the way that they used to work, although now futures contracts are traded primarily as financial instruments. That is to say, very few people actually take delivery of the good at the end of or at the contract expiration. But you can do that in some cases, and you used to be able to. And so a futures contract is like, you put up like whatever, 5,000 USD and you control like 100,000 bushels of wheat. And then at the end of the contract, you can take delivery of that thing. You used to be able to. So Q, what my question is, how many hundreds of thousands of bushels of wheat do you currently have stored in your personal warehouse in LA? How are you hedging against the future wheat apocalypse?
Okay. So my friend called me out on being like, we've had this conversation before where I get very uncomfortable buying certain equities. Like, for example, I will never buy a defense stock. Good for you if you're comfortable making money in that way. I do not want to profit off of war. And he kind of brought up, he was like, I mean, dude, you're profiting off of famine and people going hungry. And while there's a degree of that, I do actually believe that it's going to affect me in a way, in some capacity. And mind you, like, I very rarely eat bread, let alone wheat products. So it's not like that's a staple of my diet necessarily, but I also understand that it is probably the highest percentage of caloric intake globally speaking. This is not financial advice. I have shares of WEAT. It's a wheat ETF. What are
we talking about here?
I mean, you asked me.
I wanted to know how many fucking bushels of wheat you have.
I'm telling you, I'm trying to explain how I don't actually own bushels of wheat, but there's a legitimate thing that I have because of this belief of mine, which is like, I own this wheat ETF. Like that is,
he has an IOU of an IOU of an IOU.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm fucking getting at.
It's the fan. They're like, "Q, you're getting paid last." Like,
not even that. You're never getting paid. You're getting punched in the crotch instead. Like, have fun staying poor, you wheat maximalist. Dude, yeah, I feel like next week you're gonna be like, "Look, I'm not saying that Bitcoin is dead, but I, as an independent investor, have sold all my Bitcoin for just 100% wheat." Now, you may have heard that wheat can go bad. It may or may not have instigated the Salem witch trials because people ate, wheat that had gone bad and hallucinated a bunch of shit. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, all wheat all the time, and then you're gonna rip your shirt off and you're gonna have a full chest tattoo that's just like bushels of wheat exploding out into the future. True or false? Q, answer the question.
I mean, look, if you had bought wheat the day if you had literally sold all your Bitcoin the day I sounded the alarms about wheat and went all in on wheat, you'd actually be up on that trade. Just saying.
Fucking dare you? Cut his mic.
Do not do that. Do not do anything we're saying. None of this is financial advice. The only takeaway here is just pay attention to this, because this is a dynamic that is very fragile. If you cannot put food on the table for your family because there's no food at the grocery store, you're gonna start doing things that are considered crazy or dangerous. What's the saying? Like, we're three missed meals away from a revolution or anarchy or something like that. Like,
that's a good quote, actually.
That's the only reason I keep harping on this. I'm not a fucking wheat man. Like, I try to live a gluten-free diet, if anything. Like, I'm that LA, bro. Like, give me a grain bowl. Fuck your sandwiches. I want a grain bowl. But
you're just digging yourself deeper.
All right. Okay. Let's bring Guy on so Guy can actually just like troll me instead of trolling me in the chats. As always, remember, lock in your tickets to Bitcoin Amsterdam. Ticket prices are going to go up tomorrow. Join the wait list if you've never bought a ticket to a Bitcoin conference before. If you have first right of refusal to buy a ticket. We'll be back with Guy Swann after this commercial break. is up? Welcome back. Thank you for sticking through that commercial break. And I'm very excited to introduce our guest for today, Guy Swann. P, you know your job. Give the proper introduction. But Guy, how are you doing?
Pretty good, man. How you doing, boss?
I hope
Believe
my wheat
I can't believe
maximalism.
fucking Big Wheat has just dominated Q
Infiltrated his
over here,
mind.
stole Q from us.
What the
Unbelievable.
right? We're gonna get into it, but before
Unbelievable.
we do, I want to give you the proper introduction. Guy Swann is called by many, myself included, the voice of Bitcoin. He
The
has read
voice.
more Bitcoin related content in his sultry, smooth, mellifluous voice than anyone else alive. I think you have onboarded more people to the fundamental principles of Bitcoin than anyone else. You have an incredible podcast called Bitcoin Audible, where you read the best content in Bitcoin and by reading it, make it more approachable for the vast majority of people because we all prefer to listen to content rather than read it. How did you get where you are today, and why is your voice so incredible? Answer the question.
Oh shit. Thank you. That's a very kind introduction. And I will have to say that I'm very proud of myself, specifically recently for Dave Smith said that I orange pilled him, and I'm very honored for that because I feel like the libertarian community is kind of like a huge missed opportunity for Bitcoiners, and it's exciting to kind of see the Mises Caucus and everything that's going on over there finally kind of wake up to this, and start like really, really paying attention to it. But yeah, how did I get here? I don't know. I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole in 2011, and I don't know. Everybody was wrong on the internet, as I and so I felt like doing a podcast to correct it. But yeah, at some point, I don't remember. There were like 3 years there, like 2012 to 2015, 2016, maybe. I don't know. I always somehow had in the back of my mind. I was a big podcast listener, so it made sense. But that I should start a podcast. In fact, my brother and I, my brother Agris View on Twitter, but we both got into Bitcoin at the same time. Like he actually told me about it the day that he found out about it. So it was like within minutes, literally. And we actually have like probably like 5 or 6 lost episodes of some podcast from 2013 or 2014 or something on Bitcoin. Like there were a couple of times where we tried to start up something. And really it was after 2017, I still felt like I was a spectator. Like I've been in Bitcoin this whole time. I felt like I knew something, like I could contribute. I would see people spreading nonsense and I'd be like, oh man, like this just like straight up isn't true. Like this is how it works. And I felt like I was getting a foundation of understanding how all of these things worked. And I was just consuming everything I could get my hands on, just reading like mad. Like if there was a piece on Bitcoin, like for years there wasn't even enough content. Like I would just run out of stuff. Like I would just be searching the term Bitcoin on Google and going through whatever was available. And at some point, it was really 2017 that did it. This was like the third major hype cycle that I had been through. And I watched it happen, and then we're back on the other side, and you realize that like, okay, shit, the hype cycle has burst. Like we're back, we're headed back into a bear market. This is a big shift right now, and what's going on. I was like, holy shit, I just let this whole thing go by again. I was here, and I'm still just a speculator. Like I'm not participating. I'm not doing anything. You know what I mean? Like other than just shit posting or arguing with people on Reddit. And I was like, screw it. I'm not sitting on this anymore. And then one day I just came home from work. I was an internet technician at the time. Came home from work and I sat down and I just read, I think my very first article, I think, was from Bitcoin Magazine, if I'm not mistaken. But I just sat down with my phone on the bed and read it into the thing. And I just said, I don't like, I was all like insecure and like really nervous about doing it, you know? And I just published. I was just like, nobody's going to listen to it. It's just going to get lost in the infinity of the internet. Like if it sucks, it sucks. Like I have to stop caring about it. And I published it and it got like 15 downloads or something like that. And I was like, hey, and then did it again the next day and 4 years later.
It's an incredible story. You've changed dozens of people's lives since
That's
then.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, that's the point of it. It's
I
all
think
hear
I
that.
think you're being very modest with a dozen.
Dozens, dozens is worth it, man. Dozens.
I
I didn't
would
even catch
go so
that,
far as
but
to say a few hundred dozen, but that's just me.
We'll go with thousands of people. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I love it. And I think, you know, obviously you've done so much other stuff since then. And, but I just love how simple and effective the premise is. Like, obviously you have so many, insightful things to say, but just taking content and making it more approachable. I spend a lot of time thinking about Bitcoin education these days, and it's good stuff, man.
it's remarkable how much is, I think people really discount the insane amounts of value and also just arbitrage in translation. And not like direct translation necessarily in like from English to German, like translation in the context of like from like the engineering community to the retail community, from the like just making an idea digestible, making content exposed or accessible in a completely different way. Like the articles, I mean, I was almost shocked. I even looked for it. There's like there was not another podcast that did this, and it's such a like it's a no-brainer idea, right? Like there's nothing complex about the idea of like, well, 50 people are going to have the time to sit down and read this fucking article, but 20,000 might have time to listen to it while they're doing stuff. And you know, maybe they don't comprehend or you know, you get more detail out of it or you get more understanding of it if you sit down and like engage and read. But if you get 80% of its understanding in 20,000 people versus 90% of its understanding in 50 people, you're a huge net positive. You know what I mean? Like there's no net loss there. There's no negative side to this. The people who will read it will still read it. And it was just something that I wanted. I kept looking for, I can't tell you how many, I spent money when I was dead broke on these stupid little apps that would, luckily they're more available now, but they still suck. Like the things on Medium or whatever that you just have a robot read you the article. Like I just wanted that. Like I would constantly, like I was a technician, you know, I was driving around in a van with tools and climbing up poles and fixing people's internet and all, you know, doing networks. So I just had nothing but downtime. Like nothing took my brain. Like I could just listen to infinity. I would listen to like 6 books from Audible like a month. But I couldn't read an article while I'm driving, you know? So like I would miss all of this great content. And I was just like, I was constantly like, I wish somebody would just read this shit. And then, you know, started doing it on the show. And one of the best things too was how much value I got out of it. It was incredible, particularly early on in the show, how much I noticed my attention and my consumption or absorption of the data, of the information really changed because it's so easy, so easy. And we all do it so much, particularly when we're on the internet, of reading a title of an article, reading some comments that other people had about it, skimming like the first paragraph or two, and then thinking we read something, thinking that we have an opinion about it that's like we understand something about it when really we've got literally 20 seconds of honest exposure to the idea. And we don't even have like a thorough commercial's worth of legitimate information about it. And when you have to record something in audio, you have to go through the entire thing. And it's amazing how many times like I would be like, oh, I thought I knew about some topic or whatever, and then I would read the full article from start to finish, like multiple times as I'm going through the audio, and I'd be like, oh my God, I had no idea what I was talking about. Like I did not actually go through this article until I recorded it. And that was a huge help, to have. And that's honestly why I kept doing it for so long, for like 2 years or so with no real audience, is that I was getting a lot out of it. So like, I'd be 1,000 reads deep, and it's just so much content that I got to truly absorb or whatever, because I was forcing myself to like read it thoroughly. You know what I mean?
I hear you. I think this is a fantastic segue about doing like super due diligence and like really understanding the concepts. And I'm mostly joking there because there's just some incredible news that just came out, and I have not had time.
I was literally about to be like,
into
P,
it.
shut the fuck up. Chris, mute his mic. This is too much of a breaking story for us to literally not discuss this right now.
Tell us what's going on, Q.
So purely a rumor mill. Our only source right now is CNBC, but it seems as though FTX is now close to a deal to buy BlockFi for $25 million. This is a 99% discount off of their most recent valuation round that valued them at
their valuation was
$4.8
massive.
billion was their last valuation round. So my question to you both, and let's discuss this. How much is this like, the bear market price versus bear market price combined with there's still some shit that needs to get unwound there. And SBF maybe has seen it or has pointed it out and said, I can't pay top dollar because I need to use the rest of what you say I need to pay you to save the company. So according to our producer, Chris, the term sheet looks like it will be signed by tomorrow. There are other offers on the table. I was interpreting that, Chris, as FTX has other offers on the table to buy other exchanges, not BlockFi having other offers for themselves. But as we said, this is a developing story. CNBC is the only source. Both FTX and BlockFi haven't commented on this. Guy, your initial reaction was like, wait, time out. That valuation doesn't make sense. Talk to us about your initial reactions to hearing this.
Well, it's shocking, but it probably does make sense. I'm skimming through the article right now. One of the points that they have just at the top or whatever is that FTX gave them a $250 million loan. Like, so they gave a line of credit to BlockFi to kind of keep them out. So it makes sense that they'd have a bit of bargaining power in keeping that price as low as possible because they're obligated to them either way. But this is not entirely surprising. Like the leveraging, the DeFi leverage on top of leverage, yield chasing, which is actually just token printing arbitrage system, was bound to blow up. And everybody who thought they were going to leverage themselves into 20% APY, and that was real yield and sustainable and had no risk of just utter complete insolvency. They should be punished. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, we have to get rid of that behavior because it's stupidity. Like it was never going to work. Like, just the idea of 20% APY for nothing when there's no actual value production, there's no equity on the other side. So they call it yield, but it's not real yield. Alan Farrington has so much, Sasha Myers and Big Al, like Only the Strong Survive. What's his recent piece? Oh crap! I just
Bitcoin is Venice.
No, not the book. Which that is an amazing book. I'm starting on the audiobook very soon, actually. It's a recent article. Jesus, I just read it on the show.
Not My Capitalism.
Whatever. No, I'll look it up in just a second when I have a free moment.
Wait, I want to give you some credit. You just had a child, right? So
I did, and
I'm working. Going on.
I'm working on 2.5 hours of sleep a night. So
Go back to bed.
It's slow going on getting this whole work world back into action. I'm making it happen. But
I
yeah,
just
this sort of behavior, and like we can't have fiat finance make its way into Bitcoin. It's just incompatible. It's just incompatible. You can't do that gambling speculative shit with Bitcoin, with a sound monetary good. You're going to get your ass handed to you. So I
I
don't
want to
know.
read Safety just sent out a tweet that made me laugh audibly loud that I had to mute myself. Fractional reserve banking without a central bank debasing the currency continues to be a highly unsuccessful business model, talking about these yields that we see. Guy, my question to you is, what is it going to take for these terrible fiat ideas that continue to find their way into, I hate using this word and I apologize, but I want to say it like this. How do we stop these fiat ideas from continuing to get involved in the broader crypto market and as a casualty of that than Bitcoin itself?
Crashes, recessions, like market wipes, like deleveraging events. The simple fact of the matter is we would have never had this environment had there not been a 2008 bailout. Like if you had just let everyone who had committed the fraud, everyone who had been insolvent, all these banking institutions that had been disgustingly irresponsible, if you had just let them all go bankrupt, have them financially ruined, no one would have repeated the behavior. Instead, you bailed them all out. You rewarded them for this idiotic behavior, for this fraud. And what do you have? You have an economy now where now only the fraudulent are successful. Everyone else is being priced out of the market. It's cantillionaires and nobody else. Like it's just a club of fraud, and that's the economic success. And of course, it spills over into crypto. Like we've just gotten to the point where fiat finance is such a joke. It's so bloated, and it's just a casino. Real investing has disappeared. And the only way to make it come back is to let real investment and real capital destroy the fiat capital, destroy the imbalances and the subsidies. Sound like it's just a process of sound money. You let these people go bankrupt. You let $4.8 billion casinos get fire sold at 25 million. That's how you get rid of it.
I'm still just trying to wrap my head around, but it's a great point. I think, well, man, I'm a little speechless. This is crazy to me. I want to understand the mechanics a little bit more, but I also want to ask you, like, how is this cycle different from the previous cycles we've seen? How does this contagion that is playing out with Celsius and 3 Arrows Capital and now BlockFi, how does this mirror and not mirror what we've seen in the previous cycles at this period in time?
I think it's mostly one of degree, really, rather than kind. It's not unlike you had the 2007 or just throughout the early 2000s, the housing bubble. And then you kind of had the everything finance bubble towards the 2010s and like into 2020. So it just finds a different place to locate. If there hadn't have been like a massive like debt subsidy push and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and this huge political shift in the economic apparatus to incentivize and push people into housing, the bubble would have just happened somewhere else. It doesn't prevent the bubble. Like when you start manipulating interest rates, you're going to distort the price. You're gonna put the price of the good out of line with the supply and the demand, and you're just going to get an imbalance. And when you're talking about debt, you have an imbalance that is the apparent production and growth today at the expense of production and growth in the future. That's explicitly what you're doing. It's, as a farmer, it's rather than keeping your seed to plant crop next season, you're eating all your seed today and getting a 20% boost because you have 20% more food because you ate all your seed, but then you have nothing for the next season, for the next harvest. That's what we do. We're essentially doing that in capital markets. And then every time we find out there's no harvest, we eat the longer term seeds. Like let's say there's like a harvest every year, but then there's some sort of crop that only happens every 10 years and every 20 years. That's what we're doing. We're going longer and longer out with our debt. So where we've already completely screwed the next 5 years, well, now we're going 10, 20 years out to borrow to pay back our 5-year failure. And that's what we've done for about 50 years in the finance market, in the fiat world. And the only way to get rid of it is to let everybody realize that there's no value backstopping this stuff, that it's all a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. Literally, it's a Ponzi scheme. You're borrowing from everybody who's going to be forced into this Ponzi scheme in 10 to 15 years, and everything that they're going to produce in 10 to 15 years to pay off, to make it appear as if we're profitable today. It's just cooking the books. And as the only way out of it, like the market works, capitalism works, free markets work because of profit and loss. It's yin and yang. You can't take one away and think that you still have a market. You just get outweighed by the profit incentive, and then everybody just kind of becomes a disgusting, speculative, greedy, like poisonous suck, just a leech on the economy, because everybody's chasing profits because you've just taken away losses, which means you remove the integrity from the market. You remove all of the balancing act. You remove actual customers being the designation as to who wins or loses in the market. Like all of the integrity and the work, the research into deciding what is a good product and where do I spend my money and where do I allocate my resources and my time in the economy is taken away, because it's like, oh, we're going to have free markets, but they're going to be safe free markets where nobody loses anything. Nobody loses a job. No companies go out of business. It's like, well, then you've removed the whole mechanism. It's like saying that we're going to just eat forever as a biological organism. We're just going to eat forever and we're never going to take a shit and it's all going to be great. Like, if you don't take a shit, like, that's part of the process. The organism will die one way or the other if you manipulate and destroy the natural process. Losses are critical. Losses are where you cut the fat. Losses are where you fire the people who are total waste of resources. Losses are where you delete the companies who have been fraudulent, who have roped a whole bunch of people in and done nothing but obliterate resources, who have eaten their seed and cannot harvest. Again, they are net losses on society. You cut them out. You let them die. You let them go bankrupt and you fire sale them to the people who were actually productive, who actually had savings, who had surplus. And what we have done is we have rewarded everyone who has been eating their seed, who has been burning our land of all of its value and its ability to hold crops, at the explicit cost of the people who are actually making the food, who are actually doing the real work that is propping everything up. We're burning our savings to prop up our debt and our loss. Our profits are being used to keep our losses going. And it just has to correct. And it's all because we're cooking the books. It's all because our money is screwed. It's because it's being used as a tool of manipulating nominal data at the cost of qualitative reality. Make the numbers look good and screw whether or not anybody has food or we have power. And that's what fiat enables. And Bitcoin fixes that. And the only way it fixes that is if people like BlockFi, companies like BlockFi and Celsius and 3AC go out of business.
I don't disagree with the point you're making. What you have essentially described is a purely free market system. We just unfortunately have never in my lifetime seen that or had that operate. I wonder though if something like we're still gathering information, so keep your eyes out on how this deal actually comes to fruition. One of our colleagues, Brandon Green, is pointing out this could be very similar to the JP Morgan Knickerbocker deal back in 1907, which was a loan with an option to buy on the other side, which would kind of make sense given the fact that it was a $250 million loan, 10% of that option to buy, $25 million. I think those two offerings are in some way related, but does Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX stepping in this instance actually solve the issue of letting a company like BlockFi crumble, fall, and have to learn from their mistakes and retry? Or is this sort of that bailout system that we've seen repeated time and time again across industries and across sectors here in America and across the world? America is not the only guilty party of that.
Probably depends on how FTX actually is. Like, I mean, if they're providing, a real service and real value, which they seem to just be a company, they charge fees and people use their service. Granted, it's in a way to prop up the crypto gambling casino, but take that as it is. At least there is a real purpose for trading and arbitrage. Like, price discovery is a part of the market. But in the context of like losses and companies going out of business or companies getting sold off from people who are irresponsible with capital to people who are responsible with capital, from people who are from organizations that are losses to organizations that have surpluses, this would technically be that, right? Is that BlockFi was improperly evaluated at $5 billion or whatever, and it lost 99% of its value because it got fire sold to somebody who actually had profits and has completely survived through all of this because they didn't leverage themselves to the hilt and they just have capital. They have capital when there's blood in the streets because they weren't stupid. They didn't leverage their whole world around the fact that there would never be blood in the streets. They knew that it was a reality, and so they had a sustainable business practice. And now they're buying BlockFi. That to me is not a bailout. That to me is them getting a deal by actually having capital when nobody else has capital. That's if a farmer, destroys their land or, has a terrible harvest and then they go out of business and I get to buy their land at 1 cent on the dollar, then that's a benefit for me. That's a thank God we have gotten the resources, those precious, scarce resources out from under that idiot's management and to mine, where I can hire somebody who actually knows how to grow food. So if there is any equity left in BlockFi, if there is a half decent brand, if there's a credit card that pays sats that, can actually be sustainable by being a legitimate banking service of some sort, and you get rid of the idiotic 6%, 10% return because they're betting on DeFi and risking everybody's money, scrap all that and take the DeFi, the BlockFi brand and turn it into a productive business. Great. That's not a bailout. That's a restructuring. That's a ripping apart everything that is bullshit in that company, trying to find something that's real and building that back up. I mean, granted, I don't know anything about this deal. I know what we have accomplished in this. I'm just talking about in the context of hypotheticals. I have no idea.
I appreciate you entertaining my very speculative question and conversation here. Fully want to reiterate the point that Guy just made, which is this is a developing story. This news literally broke 20 minutes ago. So TBD how this actually looks, how it pans out. A lot of moving pieces here, but we've started to see there's a theme that I've been paying attention to now for about 3 years. And it's outside of the Bitcoin and crypto ecosystem that I was paying attention to at first. My background, I come to Hollywood, and this idea of consolidation started to become a real talking point, especially when Disney bought Fox. And the conversation in Hollywood started to turn into, there's just going to be, by the end of this decade, there'll be maybe 5 studios and they'll all cannibalize one another and they'll all just buy each other out for the sake of their library, their subscriber list, or whatever each studio individually has an asset of. And so you're starting to slowly see this combination. There's a reason why Discovery bought Warner Media. There's a reason why Netflix is now looking at paid ads. That you saw for the last 3 years roughly across every industry. And you're seeing it now, I think, pick up at a much more rapid pace. And it will, especially in this impending recession, do in large part because businesses like, in this example, BlockFi, that had a bad business model and is probably going to have to either, the market is going to dictate you're going to go under, you're going to go bankrupt because your business fucking sucked, or someone like FTX is going to come in and, hey, we're going to start absorbing you. We're going to start buying this because we want that aspect of their business and we want that for that aspect of their business. And it's going to, and I am being very long-winded, and now my question is, will this cause an issue if people only have 3 different exchanges to choose from?
Well, I mean, if there's always consolidation in a market like that, the question is, are these, man, we're seeing this everywhere. This is not kind of a unique phenomenon to Bitcoin or crypto, whatever you want to call it. Is we're witnessing the same thing in the legacy markets. Like, in fact, this kind of been like a trend of 20 to 30 years of this. It's so crazy, like the poison of passive investment, and BlackRock and Vanguard has done so much to centralize and politicize the investment landscape. It's the only reason this ESG nonsense can even possibly exist for even a short period of time, because it is not real investing. It is virtue signal investing. But no, everybody who is in putting up their capital for this has no idea. Like, people who have invested their 401ks do not know that it's being used to support ESG capital, like to just promote and direct that Vanguard and BlackRock are pushing their capital into these things because they've given over their signing rights. It's crazy. We have literally like trillions and trillions of dollars in these organizations, and nobody realizes that as soon as they like put these things in an index, or these it's not an index, I forget what the hell it's called, whatever, that in the fine print, or well, just in the contract, they're saying that BlackRock, Vanguard, like these massive companies now have voting rights over the capital that they invest. So they quote unquote invest in Apple, but they don't have any signing power. They can't direct, even if it's like $20 million, they can't tell Apple what to do because they have signed that over to BlackRock. So BlackRock then gets to decide what Apple is going to do. You've just given your power to BlackRock. And that centralization is going to continue because we're in this process of collapsing the previous unsustainable thing and consolidating it into the bigger unsustainable thing that simply lasts longer because it's bigger. And that's what we have been witnessing for a very long time. And I think we're kind of reaching the end game. That's why I think these credit crises, these credit cycles are getting much, much shorter. Like, we've basically had a full credit cycle from the end of 2019, kind of March 2020 era to now. Whereas the previous credit cycle was arguably from 2010, maybe in 2014, but we were kind of looking at decade-long to 15-year-long credit cycles, and they have become much shorter and much more volatile. And I don't think we will come out of that until we clean it. And I expect to see consolidation. Like, I think we're in like this constant process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And we will see the same thing in, the consolidation. After you have this major disruption phase of a market, you then have consolidation, where the new capital comes in and they consolidate until they become unsustainable, or they start abusing their position, or they believe that now they're the incumbents and they have all the power and they can just do whatever the hell they want. And then it works against them, and then they get disrupted again. And with exchanges, like, that's a negative thing. In my opinion, to end up with just 2 to 3 exchanges that everybody uses, yeah, that's garbage. I hate that. That will be bad for the industry as a whole, but it's also exactly the sort of thing that causes pressure to disrupt. So I don't know if there's a natural solution other than the fact that it is its own solution when it starts to cause a problem. And if you have the tools and the technology to actually continue the cycle of disruption, the cycle of recognizing where the problems are, like, we're not going to put up with Bitcoiners, cypherpunks in general, like the real core of this philosophy and this movement, are not going to put up with like reinstituting censorship or KYC to the massive major rails. If there is anybody who will build an alternative and find a route around it, that is the economy. That, I mean, that is the ideology, the philosophy that does exactly that. Like that is what it's based on, right? That's the core philosophy itself. So yeah, that sucks. Yeah, watching things consolidate. Granted, watching things consolidate into solvent businesses um, uh, is at least better than watching them consolidate into insolvent and irresponsible businesses. But nonetheless, I think it is a growth and dependence on third parties, right? It's increasing the trusted third party space, and I think it's really kind of a matter of time, but anything we can do to push ourselves back into another phase of splitting up, of spreading out, of re-decentralizing the market, I think is an important thing to stay on top of, like to have that perspective that we always need to be in that mindset. Like, you know, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Never get complacent, never think that we're done.
Complacency seems to be sort of the root cause of demise in a lot of historical examples. Just my opinion and conclusion, reading and studying what I have. Guy, there's been a lot of news. I mean, it's the bear market woes. What is one thing in particular that's really sticking out to you during all of this?
Just in the bear market in general?
Bear market in quotes.
Bear market in quotes. Um, uh, really, it's probably how well Bitcoin is positioned right now. Is that this feels like, I mean, I guess everything in Bitcoin now, like I've been in Bitcoin for so long that like I feel like everything is just compared to the Mt. Gox implosion, and the 2013, 2014 hype cycle and vicious bear market. Is that it truly felt like, for anybody who was there, it truly felt like the whole system was dead. Like that, like everything was gone. Mt. Gox, like just a couple of months before their implosion, was 90% of the liquidity for the entire global Bitcoin market. Like they were it. Mt. Gox was Bitcoin at the time. And to have that go under, it felt like death. It felt like it was done. And a lot of people were certain. Like we bought some GPUs off of a friend of ours who had gotten into Bitcoin or whatever, and he had a computer and he was like, "Dude, man, it was really cool, but this shit's up. Like it's over." And we were like, "Man, I really don't think so. I really think this is just an awful, horrible growing pain." And I think I think you have the wrong assessment of where we are right now. Like, I think it'll be a long time before we come back, but I don't think this thing's done. And now, like having that is kind of my foundation for what a bear market feels like. This is like, I don't know. It just, like, there's nothing about the legitimacy or the long-term survival of Bitcoin that I feel like has been threatened at all, really. In fact, the amount that's still being built and accomplished right now, outside of, like, the only thing down is price. Like, that's it. And everything else fundamental to what's happening here is nothing but better. I mean, even in the context of like negative developments, like the EU's obnoxious travel rule, it's being legitimized everywhere. It's being recognized as this is a permanent facet of reality. Like this is the new world. We live in a Bitcoin world. And it's here to stay. And only the people who always thought Bitcoin was going to zero still think Bitcoin's going to zero. So in that sense, I don't know. It's just, I mean, it sucks that the price is down. Sure. You know, I had to put up some, a little bit more collateral. I have a small Bitcoin loan, to work on stuff in the house. And I had to put up collateral. I was like, ah, damn, that sucks. But I mean, other than that, it's, the price is down. Bitcoin seems fine.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I agree. The fundamentals have never been stronger. The discount that we are seeing right now in relation to the strength of the network and the mind share that Bitcoin has, separate from all of the like life-changing aspects of Bitcoin, which are more important than ever in the world we are living in now, the one that is currently attempting to be forced on us. To me, the asymmetric bet that Bitcoin represents from a purely financial perspective has never been more in our favor. It's remarkable.
I agree. I think Bitcoin is also proving its position, like proving its resilience. Is that the price will dip, hash rate will change hands. You know, Bitcoin. I'm looking. I've been trying to do this for like 6 months, but the downstairs is still not finished. I might. This opportunity might be too hard to pass up. Because what I'm doing actually is I'm going to be heating the basement with Bitcoin miners. So, and what's funny is that like the upfront capital, unless I buy some S19s, I was thinking of getting a couple of S9s because I had somebody I spoke to at Bitcoin 2022 who was heating with using one S9 for heat, and they were able to heat 1,500 square feet reliably to the point that they were having to duct out. And I was like, one? Are you kidding me? That's insane. And like a heating unit, it's like a few grand.
Yeah, exactly.
A few grand. S9 is $300, $400 maybe. Like prices are pretty damn good right now.
They're incredible.
If like, how long does that have to cost me more in energy for heat? And I get no Bitcoin. Like I would have to get no Bitcoin from it to then meet the cost of a $2,000 heating unit, you know? And so like I just can't, like, purely from like, oh God, this is going to be a little weird and it's going to be a project and I don't have time for more projects. But purely outside of that context, it seems like the better monetary decision, the more efficient heating method from an economic standpoint. So now I just really desperately want to know what the Thumb production, like what the amount of heat produced versus the wattage used versus the kilowatt hours used from a basic heating element, because heating elements are not efficient. Like the way we produce heat is really kind of bad, you know,
It's
like
awful,
we just,
yeah.
like it is almost as inefficient. I mean, it is just inefficiency. It's the same method that we use through all of electronics and anything that runs electricity through it, is that it just has, the more resistance it has, the more heat, right? And like the more ohms or whatnot. So that's what we do to produce heat. That's what we do for a stove or whatever, is we just run it through something that has huge amounts of resistance. And so we're just losing all of the charge and it's turning it into heat. But it's a garbage. It's not an efficient way to create heat. So I really, really want to do some serious math on it after I get this thing plugged in. I got some guy who was like happy. I was actually talking about this on the plane back from Bitcoin 2022. And randomly, the guy sitting in front of me apparently had been listening to our entire conversation. And he does heating and air and he does like custom setups. And he was like, call me. we will set this up for you. We will get it so that it triggers to vent outside and vent inside. Like, I mean, he listened to the whole conversation. He just eavesdropped the entire time. We were flying home.
I love that so much.
But I got his card, and I'm gonna call him up. I'm gonna let him do it. He got my business.
Please keep me posted on that.
Yeah. I want to do a video on this, like as I get it up, because I'm really excited. But right now, miners are dropping in price. And I might actually be shelling out $4,000 and getting an S19. I don't know. We'll see. Because it's hard to pass that up.
Yeah, man. There was a mining focused Nashville meetup at Bitcoin Park recently, and I think Harry Sudduck and Denver Bitcoin Adam O were talking. Yeah. I may have misheard them, but I thought that they were saying that ASICs are incredibly energy efficient at producing heat. It's basically, I think they were saying like however many kilowatt hours you put in, you get like 99% or more back as just straight heat, and then you're offsetting that cost with the fact that you're producing Bitcoin. It's just, I was like, holy shit. So I actually have this like glorious like rabbit hutch. It's like a rabbit tractor that we're going to be heating with S9 output during the winter here. So
if that's true, people are not talking about this enough.
I know.
This literally means that you can change every single heating element that does not need to catch on fire should be replaced with a Bitcoin miner, because its net cost is zero from a heating perspective. Like, because all you're doing is gaining efficiency. You're literally just, if you don't even produce the Bitcoin, if you don't get any Bitcoin from it, but it produces more heat per kilowatt hour, you can just cut it off when you don't need the heat. If that is the case, if that is actually the case, I want to see numbers. I want to see somebody who's done thorough research and compared the two. But if that's the case, then there is absolutely no reason to ever put a gas heater in a house again.
I know. I feel like I must have misheard. It can't be that.
It can't be. It can't be. I feel like that must be impossible.
It's got to be, right? But
I can't
find out.
But I'm not convinced. Like I want to. It has to be entertained. I want to see the numbers, because even if it matches or if it's a little bit under, I still think the economics dictate that no one should put a heating element in their house again. So, but we'll see. I don't know. I really want to. I mean, it's enough that I'm doing it in the basement one way or the other. I mean, granted, I'd also just want to mine Bitcoin. It's like one of those things, like I've thought about doing the podcast for 4 years and then finally broke down and did it. Like, I'm like, I cannot believe I have not produced a hash in 9 years. You know what I mean? Like I did it on my GPU back a billion years ago, and I was like only getting 0.2 Bitcoin a day, which was like, pennies. And I was like, this just makes my computer loud. And I cut it off after a couple of weeks or something like that. Dumbass, absolute dumbass. But, I need to be mining. I need to be mining one way or the other. I need to be producing hashes. I need to put my money where my mouth is. I guess that's right. We need some proof of work in this house.
Love it.
I wanted to crack a stupid joke about the fact that, Bitcoin is not in the physical realm. So how the fuck are you going to stick it in your mouth? P has been honestly rubbing off on me so much, and I've become a bit of a wild card at this point. I used to be a much more proper and put together.
Embrace the darkness. Embrace the darkness.
I'm not a troll, Chris. Not yet, at least.
You get your troll, but when do you get your troll badge? Does the meme factory have to anoint you?
Look,
I think I have to be. Someone else has to give it to me. I definitely can't give it to myself.
So when I first started doing
too trolly.
No. So when I first started doing this with Q like 2 months ago, we had Joe Carlos on, and Q was horrified at like the stuff that I was saying. He didn't realize that like Joe and I like go way back into Clubhouse days. We used to say like the craziest shit to each other, and but then most recently we had June 7th American Hodl on earlier this week, and Q showed me up, man. He was like, he immediately was like, June 7th was like, I'm not wearing pants, stood up, was like cruising around in his boxers. Hodl was like, who the fuck do you think I am? Neither am I. And then Q was like, all right, let's do this. And I had to keep my pants on, and it was because
to be honest, I haven't worn pants since Jude told me to take them off.
See, that's what I'm saying. You are leveling up. You've surpassed me already. You surpassed me in the trolling. I'm here for it. Let's fucking go.
I feel like we've exhausted this unless either of you want to keep going down this hole. I know that originally we kind of wanted to talk about some more education stuff.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have a slight tangent. I wanted to ask you, Guy. So you're a new father? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. He's 5 weeks old in like a day.
What has that experience been like? Like, I'm just so curious. You know, in Bitcoin, we talk a lot about having children, the importance of family, and I just love to talk to you about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. It's been, dude, it's epic. It's really epic, and like it's volatile. It's unbelievably volatile. It's like the Bitcoin price. Like your emotional volatility is like sky high, and then just dead, like falling like a rock. Like just like the baby, just like Rad. Like he's super happy and everything's the greatest thing in the world, or I'm just sitting uncomfortably and it's death. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life, which might be true at the time. But that has kind of been what the experience is like. You know, people tell you, I was actually just talking with Chris about this. People tell you like, oh, it's a lot of work, you know, and you're going to lose all your time. 100%. I'm not exaggerating when we talk about like 2 to 3 hours a night, which I'm surprised after like the serious, like kind of sleep delusions that occurred like the first few nights, like even in the hospital, like both me and my wife had this weird, like these weird moments of like unconscious movement throughout the room sort of thing, and like just like not even being aware of where we were, and like, oh my god, whose baby is this, like this just like super like I'm on drugs sort of sleep deprivation. But past all that and life slowly getting back to normal is uh I've been shocked at how well I can function on like 3 hours of sleep. I didn't even think that that was possible. I thought that I was gonna be like, I don't feel totally like I'm tired. Like, you know, I'm like a little bit sluggish. But but it's great. You know, and the analogy I used with Chris, because I've been trying to figure out how to explain it, because you know, when you say, "Oh my god, it's just a ton of work and I get no sleep," you get the impression that it's like a bad thing. Like I don't want to give off that like, oh, this is terrible and I don't like it. So the analogy that I came up with recently was that like imagine you have like a dream and there's like some big thing that you've always wanted to do in your life. Like one of mine is making a feature film. And like I actually did film and everything before I went the tech route. Like, and that's why I'm kind of getting back into it. But imagine you wanted to do that thing, and uh, you finally start working on that project. You get no sleep, like it's 12 hours a day of just like constant work. You're managing a lot of things, like your emotions are all over the place. You're certain the project is going to completely fail one day, and then the next day everything's going great and it's the greatest project that you've ever worked on. It's the most work you've ever done, but it's the most meaningful thing you've ever done. That's what it feels like. Like I would never find myself in that situation and be like, I I want to stop doing this project. Like that's the whole point. Like life is always work. Life is always painful and volatile. And in fact, if your life isn't like that sometimes, then you're not really living. And the whole point is to find something meaningful to do. And it's crazy how much I love this little kid that just kind of showed up. And it's been epic. It's been epic. That's just probably just the best way to explain it in all the ways.
I'm making a note. I'm putting you down as pro on kids rather than con.
I'm pro
children.
kids.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Definitely just booked a vasectomy after hearing all of that, though.
Oh, God.
I kid. I do want to crack one joke though and ask. Like, I'm a How I Met Your Mother fan, and anytime I'm at that point in my life where way too many weddings, friends are starting to have kids, and I had one friend who had a kid, and I had that moment where I thought back to like some crazy shit we did together in college. And then my head was like, that person is a father? So, Guy, I want you to now share a crazy, ridiculous story from your youth that when your son turns 18, we're going to clip this for you, and then you can show them this video when they turn 18. Kingston, don't tell your dad we're doing this.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. So this is when my brother and I were living together, and yeah, this is definitely the one to tell. Okay, without getting too ridiculous. So we were living together, and we're poor. This was actually during Bitcoin days. I think this was post Bitcoin. So maybe a decade ago. And we're dead broke or whatever, and we have like crappy glasses and just like things like it's like that's that college sort of, or just after college hodgepodge of crap where nothing actually matches. You just kind of have the things that you've collected over the years that didn't get thrown away. And we had these candles. I was always getting these candles, and they're like Dollar Tree candles, but they were like big, and they had like thick glass, and they were like the perfect glasses, like to drink out of. And so what I would do is I would run the candle all the way down, and then I would heat up the last of it, like the last little bit of the wax, and I dump it out, and then I clean out the thing, and then like I was slowly getting like a collection of glasses out of these candles. But I wasn't the most attentive and responsible person at doing this, and the method by which I was heating these things up was by putting them on the stove. Because what do you know? The top of the stove will create heat, and you just turn these little knobs, and it gets warm, and it will melt the wax. So one night at like 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm not like a lot not sober, but I'm not sober. And I put on one of these candles on the stovetop to melt the wax, because I'm like, man, I'm gonna finish my whole set of glasses. And so I sit this thing on it, and I go into the living room, and I'm like playing video games or watching a movie or something. I don't know. And at some point, I just smell something, and then it triggers, and I'm like, oh shit, oh my God. And I jump up, and my brother's asleep, has been for a couple hours. And now it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I go into the kitchen, and sure enough, here is this candle, and there's just this giant flame just coming right. The wax, the whole of the wax has just burst into flames, and it's on fire. And I'm like looking at it, it's like, okay. What do I do here? All right, just need to cover up, just need to cut off the air. I grab the hand towel from the thing, I plop it over the top of it, and goes right out. And so I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, all right, the first thing, cut off the heat. All right. And I'm just holding it, and I'm like, all right. And I take it off, burst right back into flames. It's like, shit, I put it right back over top of it. I'm like, all right, so what do I do? How do I make wax stop burning? And I'm like looking around and trying to think, and like now the thing is getting hot. Like my hand towel is getting hot, and there's like a little bit of burnt crusties where it's like touching the glass. It's like, so I pull it off, burst right back into flames. I'm like, shit. All right, I need like a powder. I need something to suffocate this thing, to douse it. And I go, and we have this in the top of the cabinet. It hadn't been used in a long time. And there's this big thing of protein powder. And I'm like, all right, I'll get this. And there's already like wax caking onto the walls and on the cabinets. And so I get this big thing of protein powder, and I'm about to just dump it on there. And I'm like, what's in this protein powder? I'm an idiot. I'm in panic mode. I didn't have any flour. Good option. If I had flour, I'd used it. So I take this protein powder, and I was like, all right, I got to test this. And I take just a little bit, pinch of it, and I throw it in there, and it's like, like it's like flare, like a little firework. And I was like, oh shit, I'm not gonna use this. I'm gonna move this to the other side of the kitchen. and the flame is still just going. Like it's really tall. And I live in a cardboard box. Like we lived in a trailer. This thing would burn so fast. And so I'm like, okay, there's got to be something around here. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe the best, like the stove is still hot, right? Like to try to cool this thing down in some way, maybe I can just move it off the heat. And immediately as I was starting to push it, I stopped because in the back of my mind, my mother is a chemistry teacher, AP chemistry for high school. So we've done all sorts of experiments, and I got to be, set some of these things up with her at home to test them out. And I took her class too. But I know what happens to glass when you move it from hot to cold. Like I could set up a thing to destroy the glass. And no, I did not have extinguishers. Unfortunately, I did after this. And so my mind thought that, okay, if I move this off the heat, it'll get cold and it might crack. But I was like, I stopped. I was like, nah, I convinced myself that this whole stovetop, everything is warm. Everything is warm. I just need to scoot it right off just a little bit. The second, like it was 1 inch off the thing, it cracked and the wax went everywhere. Like the whole thing just collapsed into little pieces of glass. And the wax, you know how there's the little rim, like that little lip on the edge of the stove? That's there so that stuff doesn't just like run off of it. And all the wax immediately went all the way to the edges, because there's still a good bit of wax in the bottom of this candle, went immediately to the edges. And you know how like there's a mushroom cloud when a nuclear bomb goes off, and it just like coalesces into this just huge thing, and it went up to the ceiling and it spread out and it just left ash and wax in this big circle on the ceiling. I was like, oh my God. And I was like, all right, Jeffrey, like that's when I was like, all right, I got to get somebody up. This is getting bad. The whole stovetop is literally on fire. And immediately I start digging through other stuff, and I found baking soda. We had baking soda in the refrigerator to help with, smell of old food or anything, and immediately just doused the whole thing, and it went out. The kitchen had a coat of wax on everything. All the cabinets, all the ceiling, which is popcorn ceiling. You can't even clean it. And we mostly just left it up there. The back behind the stove was just kind of like had soot all over it, but nothing. Thank God for the little lip on that stove. We did not burn down, and I did not lose any Bitcoin keys that day.
That is incredible.
I'm dying laughing, like genuinely had to mute myself. Guy, the weird thing is, so here's the weird part about the story you just told. We actually knew about this story because you were under surveillance when this happened. And we have images of the incident.
Oh dear God.
So P, if you could
right.
please pull up the images of Guy dealing with his candle fire.
All right. So I'm sharing my screen.
That's pretty much it.
For context, this is the system. This is called A2. It is a machine learning tool that can be used to generate images from text prompts. And it is absolutely mind-bending. And so while you were talking, I entered in wide angle shot of kitchen in trailer, a man throws flour on a stove, fire with flames everywhere. And these were generated in about 30 seconds. It's in like super restricted closed beta, but it's, I got access recently. I've been playing around with it. It's amazing. Anyway.
How do you get access? I really want to play with that thing.
It's almost impossible. We'll talk about it, but it's pretty ridiculous. Fun times. It's an incredible system.
That thing is going to be, this is going to be like an epic thing when the faces. Yeah, it's going to be really epic when AI like really gets to generating legitimate looking, like trust in everything is going to break down, which will actually be a good thing because I think we'll hyper localize. It's just kind of the inevitable outcome. You can only trust. The digital becomes what is verifiable, what is behind your keys, and everything else is just what's local in your life, and who you can actually trust, one to one. That transition will be a mess, but I think it will be a pretty significant net positive. It will a lot of avenues for control and manipulation and false data will actually fall away because all information is unreliable in some form or fashion. And reputation systems and the ability to vet information will become absolutely critical. I mean, we live in a world where 99.999% of stuff just never gets known. Like crimes get committed and nobody gets caught. So, we're kind of in this place where a lot of people think that things are really, really bad. And I think it's actually the opposite. I mean, that's not true. Like things are bad, but in the context of like history, I think it's like one of those things where things have been bad for a long time. It's just that now we get to see it and now it feels terrible, but it feels terrible because it's being exposed. It's when everybody's blissfully unaware, it's like finding out you're in the Matrix. Like that wasn't when the Matrix was created, it's when you figured out you were in the Matrix, right? The blissful ignorance sure feels a lot great. It's specifically blissful ignorance. It is not blissful to be aware, to recognize or see when all of this, the manipulation, the propaganda, and everything. So it'll be interesting. It'll be freakily really interesting. The AI thing is crazy. It's crazy. And those are definitely legit pictures of me in the trailer trying to put out that damn fire.
Man, I want to ask you more about, circle all the way back around to kind of Bitcoin education. What do you think are the things that we can do as people in the Bitcoin space in order to further or to educate more people more efficiently and more effectively? And I ask you this because obviously you do such an incredible job of it, but I'm curious, like what do you think that the educational aspect of Bitcoin is currently missing, and how can we as Bitcoiners improve it?
Translation is like I said, going back to like my original point, is that there is so much value in just re-explaining and making an idea digestible. I think really one place that we're suffering a lot that I hope to be a part of its correction is video work, is film. I think Swan Studios is doing some massive work in that regard. They've really become they've really kind of stepped up to this one. But I think that's a really big one. The video, the YouTube scene is absolutely dominated by crypto. Bitcoin, solid Bitcoin is hard to find in that sphere. And I also think stories, man, people learn through stories. And I don't even care what that means. That might mean like stepping up our meme game, literally. Like I think memes are powerful tools for bite-sized, for like principled education in a sense. Because it's bringing an idea down to its absolute most succinct version possible. There is an art to that. I mean, obviously a lot of them are just trolls and they're stupid and they're, for the sake of whatever, like it's just idiocy. But there is something real in memes. Like I did the Matrix meme or whatever of Morpheus talking to Neo and explaining, like as silly and like just kind of ridiculous as that thing was, I think it's kind of a useful perspective to share. I did it because I think it's a cool way to explain a simple idea to somebody. And story is how we learn. Story is how we relate to everything in life. Like it's why the Bible is a collection of stories about the struggles of being alive, about being human, the struggles of integrity. Like we completely misconstrue the lessons. We articulate to future generations what it's like to be human, what it's like, what are the consequences of taking responsibility for our actions versus pushing them onto someone else. What is karma? How do we lead ourselves into a personal hell versus a personal heaven? How do you have integrity, and what are the struggles of being, of having that integrity? And we need more stories. We need stories that explain the principles of Bitcoin, that explain the philosophy, because one good story that is just about a character in a struggle, and the propagandists know this. Drop the little hints in, just have a Marvel superhero and then just drop woke stuff, right? Like they get it. And I think we need that, not in the context of like propaganda, but in the context of explaining through the struggles of being human, why the principles of Bitcoin matter, why Bitcoin, the system, matters, why these tools matter, and why these things are important to our future, and what kind of future we could be in without it. And like the Mandibles, Atlas Shrugged. There's a reason Atlas Shrugged is one of the most cited books for changing people's philosophy, their perspective on how things are in morality. And it was a huge part of my adjustment, like that, the speech about money, and that like, is money the root of all evil or whatever? Like, it just, that was fascinating. I had never thought about it in that perspective before. And because it was in the context of these characters that I cared about and I had identified with their struggles throughout, it had a massive impact on me. And Bitcoin needs story. And that's one of the things that Satoshi actually gave us. That's such a beautiful little serendipitous thing about Bitcoin, is that there is no origin story as unbelievable yet true as Bitcoin's origin story and Satoshi and the cypherpunks. It's so fascinating. And I think that would go a long way. I think if Bitcoiners did more video work, did better memes and better stories, told stories, I think it would go a long way. I wish we had more of it.
Well said.
What's your favorite? I know you brought up two excellent books, both Atlas Shrugged and Mandibles, but what are some other non-Bitcoin books that are some of your favorites that you've read over the years?
Ooh.
This will be your final question.
Okay. Damn, that's so many. It's like asking me what my favorite movie is. It's different every week.
So I feel you on that, though,
Yeah.
on such a deep level.
I'll just say, because it's such an amazing book, and I'm a fantasy nerd too. I usually do like 2 nonfictions, 2 fantasy or fiction stories or whatever. I do like a good mystery and some thrillers and stuff from time to time. But The Name of the Wind. The Name of the Wind, the King Killer Chronicle series. Jesus, that is just a well put together book. The story is perfect. It's like layered. Like, as somebody who is a study of the arc of a character and the puzzle piece, the magic trick that is a story, like the way you tell a story and build suspense and create a satisfying payoff is like creating a magic trick. It's orchestrating pieces of the puzzle so that the reader, so that the viewer or the reader can put those pieces together before you put it together for them, before you show them the picture, and you get that unbelievable satisfaction of like, oh my god, that's so fucking cool, or like they finally solved the problem, or they accomplished that deep-seated goal that the character was seeking from the very beginning. And The Name of the Wind is just that. It's one of those stories within a story, and it's such a clever world that was built, and the character is so much fun, and has such a visceral, like, human goal of just like kind of finding his place. It's a great book. It's a great book. Yeah.
Guy, I want to be respectful of your time. If you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom, leave it with us. And of course, tell everyone how to stay up to date with all of the stuff that you're cooking up.
All right. Yeah. So got lots of audiobooks in the works, and I'm finally getting back into the swing of my workflow with this, and I'm getting back into video too. I actually hope to have hope to be dropping it today, pretty soon. I'm almost done with it, but it's just a really fun. It's one of my stupid Bitbox commercials that I did on the show, and I decided it needed an upgrade and a video because I'm trying to learn DaVinci Resolve and Fusion and seeing what I can do in my little setup before I actually have a studio. So I just threw together a bunch of shit, and it's fun. I think it's gonna be fun. So follow me on at the Guy Swann on Twitter, and I'll be dropping that soon. And yeah, always audio and video. That's my passion. Bitcoin is the center of all of it, and stay on Bitcoin Audible. Stay on Bitcoin Audible. If you want the signal and none of the noise, there's noise from time to time, but if you want mostly signal, Bitcoin Audible is it.
Hey man, hearing about how you almost burned down your kitchen was pure signal.
Pure signal, 100%.
No, it was because it like humanizes him, right? Like titans of industry, you know, like
oh Jesus Christ.
Look, how many people didn't hear that story and say, you know what? I almost burned down my trailer in a horrible wax kitchen fire as well. Now I understand Bitcoin.
At least 80% of your audience.
100%.
At least.
I know I did.
100% of the time, it's 80% of your audience.
Exactly. See, numbers don't lie. This has been incredibly fun. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining us. And
yeah, man. Good hanging out, guys.
Man. Let's do it again soon.
All right, dude. Sounds good.
You're the man, Guy. Thank you.
Peace.
Later, guys.
I just want to remind everyone, while we have your attention and maybe your curiosity, the Bitcoin Magazine print mag latest edition has been released. It's censorship resistant. We are actually going to have a spaces at 5 p.m. Eastern, Chris, for the Hong Kong Hodl, the cover piece written by our very own Peter Chihuahua. Shout out what's his actual title? He's the editor of Bitcoin Magazine, right? No. Anywho, very important person at Bitcoin Magazine. He actually took the time to write an article. He usually just rips apart mine and tells me absolutely not cute. These are the ramblings of a 5-year-old that are less coherent than a 5-year-old. But we're very proud of the work that was put into this magazine. Be sure to pick up your copy at Barnes & Nobles or the Bitcoin Magazine store. And for the love of God, could someone please use the promo code BMLive and buy one thing from the Bitcoin Magazine store? Because that was very embarrassing when I asked Raven Chen, yo, how much shit have we sold? And only to be told a fat zero. He is the editor, the senior editor of the digital magazine. We will also be having, hopefully, Nobody Caribou, Jeff Booth, Jeff Ross, BTC Sessions, among many other Canadian Bitcoiners who were at the front lines leading the charge to help many of these truckers amidst their protests, as well as a big Canada Day protest planned for tomorrow in Ottawa. D348, D, my brother, stop doxing me. I am Q. Yes, that Q. What else we got? Oh, we're going to have a spaces tomorrow for Bitcoin Magazine Pro. Again, we're going to run it back. Their monthly report will be published, I believe, tomorrow morning or later this evening. So we're going to be hosting a spaces at our usual Bitcoin Magazine live time to be chatting with Sam. Yes, we are. Shut up, P. We're doing it with Sam as well as some select Bitcoin on-chain analysts. So feel free to pop on over for that tomorrow. Our very own Dylan LeClaire will be on Fox Business. So he will not be joining us, but be sure to tune in to, what is it? Fox and Friends? No, it's not Fox and Friends.
Something with Fox in the name.
Charles Payne. All right. Charles is pulling yet another Bitcoiner onto his show. Dylan, we're proud of you. Make us proud. And for the love of God, get a legit mic and internet set up. Do not go grainy the way you do on our show or Pomp's show. Do it for yourself, not for us. And P is muted. There we go.
I said, think of the children, Dylan. Do it for the children. Get a better setup. We love you. Man,
I gotta say, like, I've seen some of the OG Bitcoin magazines, and then the more recent ones, especially the last three that we put
fucking
out.
incredible.
Dude, this is like a fucking encyclopedia. It's thick. It's meaty. This is like real. This isn't like magazine paper. This is like paper.
I don't know what that means, but what I can say is the design of this, like not, it's I don't know. It's rare that you get something that has such high production quality. That is to say, like the images, the layout, the thought that went into every single page of this substantial magazine. It's rare that you get both that and then the editorial quality. That is to say, the quality of the interviews, the pieces match it. But it's whatever, as we've gotten the last three editions, like nothing makes me prouder to be part of this organization than like reading these and being like, holy shit, like we're fucking doing it. So I know we talk about it a lot, but it's not just hype. Check out the magazine. I believe it's in, I confirmed that it's in Barnes and Nobles. If you want to, Barnes and Noble, there's only one Noble in that. If you want to get one in person, or you can order them, but it's worth checking out. They're good stuff.
A dramatic reading.
We can do dramatic reading.
Cool.
Let's do it. I'll allow it this time. Which article are you going to read, Q, and then fuck up halfway through?
So I'm just gonna read one of the Price of Principles by Dr. Bitcoin.
Dr. Bitcoin MD?
Dr. Bitcoin MD. I was like, do I need to say the MD at the end of that?
You know, my appendix was hurting. I was like, Dr. Bitcoin MD, fix my shit. And he did.
That's how you know they're not a real doctor, if you have to say both doctor and MD. But The Price of Principles by Dr. Bitcoin MD. Look, Ma, no hands. I've wanted to be a doctor for as long as I can remember. When I was 7 years old, my father bought me a bicycle for my birthday. He wheeled it into the living room with childlike enthusiasm, sure that he was about to score a ton of dad points. The bike was immaculate. It had all the bells and whistles a kid could dream of. It was the kind of thing that would make any kid in the neighborhood jealous. I took a long look at my father, now knelt in front of me with a smile tattooed on his face, then at the bike, and finally back at my father again. I mustered up a sigh and shook my head. I can't ride this bike. I want to be a doctor. I don't want to ruin my hands. Check out the rest of Dr. Bitcoin MD's 7-year-old journey, as well as many other of his stories in the latest edition of the Bitcoin Magazine Print Mag.
That was something else. That rendition, it brought tears to my eyes, tears of fury, anger, boredom. No, all joking aside, so good. Let's fucking go. Read it, and in your own voice, so that you don't have to hear Q's incredible rendition.
Hey man, I'm just trying to give you guys a dramatic reading. Like, you're getting more than your money's worth by tuning into the show as a result. You're getting like 1/10 of an article from the print mag.
All right, what's next? We've got, in 3 minutes, Jimmy Song joining us. True or false?
True.
All right.
I want to touch on this because we're having this conversation on our internal Slack channel. It seems as though this FTX BlockFi deal, like, we need more details to come out. This $25 million sticker price may be a little disingenuous, and I apologize for presenting that. It seems as though the assumption that I presented, that this $250 million loan, as well as this $25 million sticker price, are in some way connected or combined, which would actually, if they are combined, making the price tag $275 million. That is a 95% discount on the price of BlockFi from their most recent funding round, instead of 99% discount. So just, in journalistic integrity here, we want to give you guys the most up-to-date information as we receive it in real time. So To be honest, we don't fucking know. And nobody knows because both BlockFi and FTX have refused to comment to anyone at this time. Someone, I forget who it was. It was Zach Prince tweeted out, I can 100% confirm we are not being sold for $25 million. And this tweet has now since been deleted. So
But that is interesting.
This is a developing story. And I don't think, let me rephrase. I do believe FTX is going to be the owners of BlockFi. How that comes to be, at what cost, and what that looks like, we'll see. That's all I really got on that.
To be fair, though, the things that we were saying were direct quotes from the CNBC article. Not
Yes.
necessarily the most reliable source of information, but I feel pretty good about being like, here's what CNBC is saying. Blam. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot of unknowns. It's still developing. We'll keep you guys posted.
Also loving the fact that this probably means that Morgan Creek, Pomp, and everyone's favorite Bitcoiner right now, Nick Carter in Castle Island, could actually see their equity positions.
Oh, shit. I didn't even consider that.
Yep.
Whoa.
Yep.
Holy
So this is going to get
shit.
ugly before it gets cleaned up, I think.
Oh, man.
But
This
yeah.
is gonna get complicated.
Yeah.
I'm here for
So that was something that we never had a chance, or I never had a chance to highlight. But I just want to remind everyone that based on this, things need to get worked out, and the details of this deal should be a much more clarifying factor to determine, like, actually if anyone is getting paid out of this. But some people about to get wrecked, and some people who don't like to lose are about to get wrecked. So
Same old. Same, but different. Let's
Exactly.
cut to commercial, and then we'll come back with Jimmy's song. We'll dive into it.
What is up, guys? Thank you for sticking around through that commercial break. And I'm excited to introduce our guest for this segment, our weekly segment with Jimmy Song. Jimmy, how goes it, man?
It's going well, I think. I don't know. You guys tell me. There's a lot of things going on at the moment, and yeah, you guys are seeing it. So
I don't want to gloss over or ignore, the time you put into your song sheets and, fiat housing in general. And we could go down the housing rabbit hole if that's where your head is at. I would, however, love your perspective on just what we've seen transpire in the Bitcoin world in the last 48 hours, if I'm being quite honest, between Compass Mining, between Castle Island Ventures, and then now what we're seeing continue to develop out of BlockFi and FTX. I'll let you pick, but I would love your just general thoughts on what you're seeing and paying attention to right now.
Well, besides those, there's also the FTX walking out of the Celsius deal. There's also CoinFlex and what happened with them being sort of like the exchange of choice among BCHers, and Roger Ver apparently owing them 47 million, and what that says about where he's at. So yeah, I'm paying attention to all of those things, and it's this is what bear markets are like. You see who's swimming naked. A lot of people were swimming naked, and they are getting exposed like nobody's business. We're also, I'm working on an article for the next song sheet, talking a little bit about this, and I'll give you a little bit of a preview. It's this idea that a lot of people have fiat knowledge, right? And it's not knowledge that they've verified on their own, but it's knowledge that they've been told. And they think it's as good as knowledge that they verified on their own, when in fact that's not the case. And a lot of people in this economy sort of depend on that. And what ends up happening is that the central sources of information lie to them for whatever reason, usually for their own advantage. And we're seeing that sort of play out. What happens when you have a bunch of liars at the central helm of these places? You get disasters, economic ones, like you did with BlockFi, 3AC, Celsius, CoinFlex, BCH, whatever, and it's all just sort of like coming to a head here. And I mean, there's a little bit of Schadenfreude. I'm not gonna deny that. But it's also kind of sad to me how many people are still willing to trust and not verify.
A lot of lessons to be learned that unfortunately it doesn't seem like the new entrants into this space are learning those lessons. But it's not just noobs that are these guilty parties. Like Mashinsky's not like a fresh Bitcoiner of the class of 2020. Nick Carter's been around for quite some time. Like these aren't people who've necessarily just like, if Michael Saylor were to turn around and start shitcoining, given his limited time in this space, I think I would more easily understand that than some of the unwinding we've been seeing. And, P has been excellent in helping me better understand just the history of Bitcoin and the history of the personalities in this space. And I wonder if this current bear market, on top of the recession that we are going to be told we're in a recession in 3 weeks. I have told you guys for 2 months now we're going to have a recession. So feel free to wait for the government to tell you that, or just feel free to plan accordingly. This doubling up of the recession and this bear market that we're seeing, is that causing some people to maybe be more aggressive, shift their stances, or change their strategy? Or is that change in strategy a casualty of recession and bear market?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're referring to Nick here, and I think he's kind of a special case. I don't think he's shifting so he can make more money or anything like that. I think he's just under a lot of stress, and that at least reading through his tweets from yesterday, that's what it seemed like. He's under a lot of stress, and this is how he deals with stress. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but this is how he deals with stress, is sort of insulting people, things like that, which he's doing on Twitter. Hey, like whatever he needs to do, he needs to do, right? But yeah, I think that's much more the exception. But we are seeing sort of the incentives of VCs at play, and this is something that I've been pointing out for a long time in my song sheets, which is, Yeah, the VCs have the exact wrong incentive. They're capital allocators, and they need to justify why people need to invest with them instead of putting money in Bitcoin. And Nick Carter specifically put this in his sort of ranty post yesterday about how he couldn't justify just buying Bitcoin and charging them money. So he has to go invest in a lot of things, and he has 100 million to dispense, and he felt like he had to with these other things. I get it or whatever, but like the degree to which he sort of like defended it and made it sound like he started lashing out and started, I think, sort of taking positions that not even sure he believes. It's just something he has to say as a VC, which is, hey, there are lots of other things besides Bitcoin out there. Otherwise, he's undermining his own value prop, right? Like, why the hell are we paying you if you're just gonna put it into Bitcoin? This is part of his job. And I feel the same way for a lot of other VCs that invest in that stuff. So, Pump was part of Morgan Creek Digital. Now he's part of Pump Liano Ventures or something like that. Like both of those entities invested in BlockFi. Why? Because they need to justify their 2 and 20, and that's been the game for a while. Now, like whatever you think of that, I think the whole venture capital thing is going away because Bitcoin's going to beat them in bull markets. Bitcoin's going to be less costly in bear markets, and it's just going to be better all around. But in the meantime, there's going to be a bunch of them that aren't technical that continue to sort of pump these things, and that's what all of these people are good at is marketing and getting the word out and getting other people to buy it, which is why I think it's like immoral and unconscionable. But that's what they're doing, and it's unfortunate, but that the incentives sort of like show you the outcomes that are inevitable.
Yeah, it's been an interesting experience over the last 48 hours or whatever it is, watching the way that he's reacted. It's I don't know if you were in the space that the sort of like emergency like 5 hour space where he was, he had like, Dan Held and Udi and a bunch of people like up on stage sort of being like, yeah, like you're doing good. There were some really interesting moments during that conversation that were surprising to me. He made the point that like obviously he's a VC. He hasn't explicitly said that he's not that he's Bitcoin only. And if you looked into the holdings, like that was clear. But I think he has intentionally obscured the fact that he was involved in these other things, which that's his prerogative. But I thought it was really interesting when he was asked very explicit questions around like you've said things like that there are other tokens that are interesting or other blockchains that are interesting, and he kind of like waffled a bit and then was talking about he's like, well, Ethereum is interesting, and it was just very strange to like have to hear him saying those things and then not saying the other part of it, not basically advocating for Bitcoin. It was this very weird kind of dodge, and that was a very strange experience for me, to hear him, as you said, so clearly have to not say things or say things in a very weird way because those are things that he is actively invested in, which I just haven't seen out of him before. It's disappointing.
Yeah, and it's something that I've seen a lot, and this is one of the things I really appreciate about being off on my own. So when I was part of a company, you kind of had to represent the company, right? And you don't realize it when you're working there, but a lot of your opinions come from the fact that you have that job, and all of your being is making sure that you keep that job because that's your only source of income. like after coming out of the corporate world and sort of like doing things on my own, I started to realize just how much of it is like that. And I think that's the case with Nick. I mean, he's written a lot of very good articles, including for Bitcoin Magazine, and
Absolutely.
and you guys know, he's very logical and things like that. But there are certain things that you have to say as a VC, and certain things that if you want to attract the right companies, if you want to get on their cap table, you have to say. And he's feeling that tension because he doesn't want to. He's influential with Bitcoiners, although I don't know, maybe after that, the events of the past 48 hours, he doesn't so much anymore. But he can't. He's discovering what a lot of other people in the VC space discover, which is that you can't make the gains that the other VCs are making if you're Bitcoin only, because you have to do all the shitcoinery, right? Like you have to be the winner of the Cantillon effect. And also he's I get what he's trying to do, which is sort of like skirt the line. He likes being the nice guy, right? He likes being liked by everybody. And I don't think we should discount this, because a lot of people are like that and they don't like criticism. And for a lot of those people, it's very hard to be in public and get insulted even a little bit. I mean, I'm used to it at this point, and I just block people that like insult me. It's like, okay, you're not adding anything to the conversation. Block, but for certain personalities, it's very difficult. And I don't know. I don't know if he can really handle being sort of this public person that I and having to skirt this line. And I've seen a lot of VCs go down this road where they want to appear sort of authoritative to everybody, but the Bitcoiners know what's up and kind of demand that they be maximalists. Some of them capitulate a little bit, but then they still have to sort of like speak out of the other side of their mouth. And I think it was Tone Vase that pointed out to me, like, I got into this space in 2013. This was Tone. And, everybody that isn't technical that was in Bitcoin then has left Bitcoin for some altcoin project. I'm like, huh, is that true? Except Trace Mayer. And this was before Trace Mayer also was, that way. So, there's, I think, and this is what my article will be about next week, is there's something about being technical, of really verifying what what the claims are, that gives you a conviction. Now it's not a sufficient condition, but it's a necessary condition to really hold for the long term. I think you need to verify stuff on your own. You can't just go and trust other people, because at some point you will be led astray. Like, I think it is possible that like people we consider very strong Bitcoiners do go astray, and there will like I think we were all surprised by what Nick said. And I don't get this like sort of thing that people are saying, like, oh, you didn't see his portfolio, ha ha ha. Well, I don't care what your portfolio is. I really only care if you're pumping crap to your followers or whatever, at which point I think you need to be called out as a fraud. So yeah, I don't really get this like, yeah, it's difficult because I like Nick as a person. He's a good guy, and he's written a lot of good stuff, but your good deeds don't cover for your bad deeds. That's not how this space works. That's not how the law works either. You can feed homeless people at a soup kitchen all day long, but you embezzle $100,000 from a company, you're still liable for the $100,000. It doesn't suddenly cover your soup kitchen good deeds. That's not how it works. Bad behavior is bad behavior. You don't get credit for any of the good behavior. It's not a bank account. So that's what I'm seeing, and it's unfortunate to see Nick like this. It's Yeah, I don't know. If it feels like he's he's under a lot of stress. You know, like he's that guy at the poker table that's clearly on tilt, you know, and he's just doing things to satisfy his emotions. That's what it feels like to me, like just sort of observing it. I mean, I did call him out for what he said in his article, but I think that was that's what you guys would expect from me because you know I think NFTs, DeFi, and crap like that are BS. So, but yeah, I don't know. It just yeah, it's not a great situation, but that's what you get in a bear market.
I wanna discuss a little bit about that idea that you guys have introduced, that those early people involved in Bitcoin have since transitioned to other projects. I mean, you're still here.
Mm-hmm.
You maybe are not as technically involved as you were in your earlier days. Adam Back, very much a lively person in the Bitcoin ecosystem. But I want to know is if it seems, and forgive the ignorance of this question, it seems as though those people who are heavily involved in the technical side of Bitcoin have a shelf life, if you will. Well, they're doing it for an amount of time that's not necessarily predetermined or agreed upon, but at a certain point, they venture off into a different capacity or role within this space. And then a new person comes in and fills that technical need of the space. Is that an accurate conclusion to draw about sort of the cycle that we're seeing of people? And if so, is that a healthy way to transition, or is there a better way for us to be doing it, in your opinion?
Yeah. This is sort of like an age-old problem in open source projects. People burn out, and I tweeted out earlier today. Everyone wants to be a capital allocator. Nobody wants to build. And one of the people that replied was Orion WL, Vladimir Vanderlaan, one of the core maintainers of Bitcoin. And he said, well, the people that want to build are underfunded and or at thermonuclear levels of burnout. Have you checked on the capital allocators lately? I mean, this is, like normal in a lot of open source projects, sadly. Like people burn out. That's what happens. I talked to Alex Marcos like a few months ago. He was saying he hasn't contributed anything in a year and a half. I don't know what Matt Corallo's been doing, but I mean, there's a lot of people that are burned out, and Greg Maxwell left, more or less left the core project, at least as an active contributor a few years ago. And that happens, right? Like you don't have the capacity. Maybe you have a family. You have to do other things, and life changes, and that's okay. The nice thing is you have like new developers coming in all the time, and they find ways to contribute, and you have people like Peter that have been there for a really long time, and you know seem somehow to be able to manage burnout, so he doesn't burn out, right? Like he's done great in that regard. But yeah, I mean, my role, I think, is much more to get more developers on board, and I think that I determined that a long time ago, that I'm more useful that way than getting like 20 PRs in a year or something like that, which I could probably do, but it's I think I scale better if I'm teaching people. But yeah, that it's a normal thing in open source projects. People burn out, they rotate out and stuff like that, and new people come in. That's just how it is.
If only those in charge of the government in this country would follow a similar system. Like I personally think it's actually very healthy that people step away, they work as hard as possible for a short window of time, and then move on and allow someone else to come in and do the exact same thing.
Well, there's no allowing here, right? Because this is an open source project. You put in the work, and it's still, you don't know if it's gonna get in. There's nobody that says, "Oh, you know what? Like, why don't you do this?" That's a centralized development philosophy. That's not how Bitcoin is at all. You work on what you want to work on, right? But with no guarantees that it gets merged in. And this is why Paul Stork and Jeremy Rubin are kind of in distress, because they've been working on their projects for 3-4 years. I think in the case of Paul, it might be like 6 or 7, and like there's no prospect of them getting it merged in. So it's about convincing lots of other people, and it's not for everybody. It's very difficult. But for the people that do it and make it, obviously it's something worthwhile. um and there are companies funding it and so on, but it's it's not necessarily that like people step away because there's and they give up their power or anything like that. It's much more, it's all free, right? You just sort of do it. um and if you do it and people like it, then it gets merged in. If you do it and people don't like it, you end up pounding sand. That's it's just that's open source. What can I say?
Where, or let me rephrase, how does the events of the last week alter Bitcoin's perception in the eyes of those who are not involved in this space? I mean, the first entry point for anyone who's not a Bitcoin holder or aware of Bitcoin is always going to be the price. But these are not insignificant pieces of news. I mean, most of what we've discussed probably doesn't even make it out of the Bitcoin world. Like, I don't think anyone actually knows who Roger Ver is that works at CNBC. Like, maybe Mackenzie. But beyond that, like no one there knows who he is or the significance of that. They'll report on FTX because it's FTX. But where or if any, where or what of this news do you think is going to impact Bitcoin's perception in the eyes of non-Bitcoiners?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't worry too much about the perception by non-Bitcoiners, because I think the Bitcoiners' perception is much more important, and we're enough of a minority now where the perception comes through us, not through the media, right? So, my friends and acquaintances get their impression of Bitcoin largely from me, or at least the ones that aren't the non-Bitcoin friends of mine. And I think that's true of you guys as well. You probably have a large collection of friends and family that get their Bitcoin news from you. So it's not like 2013 where there's so few of us that okay, let's see what the news is saying or whatever. There's very little credibility with the media these days anyway. So people would rather hear from people they know, instead of whatever CNBC might be saying. There's an exception if you're over 65 or something like that. I think a lot of those people still listen to the news, but I don't think they're that relevant in that case. So, what are like people like you and me telling people? Well, it's a bear market. I think that's a reality. A lot of altcoiners are turning into Bitcoin maximalists. A lot of people are kind of starting to see the space for what it is. Many of them have determined that this is a degenerate gambling vehicle, and they're not wrong for most of the crypto space. Even parts of Bitcoin trading is very degenerate gambling. Um, but there is this other use case that's starting to come to the forefront, which is store value, and the other one is censorship resistant transfer of value. Those are two big cases. I think ultimately that's what people will see is, oh, okay, Canadian truckers can do transactions without the Canadian government's permission, and Russian citizens can do transactions with the Western world canceling them. Like those are the things that matter. And I think that'll be the narrative, or that's actually relevant to a lot of people. Whereas a lot of this other stuff, it's just sort of noise, right? Oh, so what if FTX acquires some company I never heard of, right? Like, who cares? Like, that's not something anyone's gonna really think that much about. They just know crypto is crashing, but there are all these other things that are going on too.
I love asking this question because I'll admit 2019 was the first time I bought Bitcoin. I watched the rise and fall in 2017, but wasn't invested, wasn't really paying attention. What are some similarities between some of the past downturns that you've experienced and seen, and what are some differences between the past and what we're seeing today?
Oh, well, I always on these downturns, the shitcoins go very fast, go down faster than Bitcoin. That's very similar. You get a lot of questions about mining profitability and how there's like a death spiral at play, and that'll be more next year as like the halvening comes closer or something like that. People will be like, "Oh, there's going to be a death spiral," blah blah blah. I mean, same narratives play out every time. So you're gonna get a lot of VCs that are probably gonna go dark. I mean, I talk about this with like Pete Rizzo sometimes about how every cycle you get like a new group of influencers. Some of them will burn out and they'll be gone. I don't know who they'll be, but um, I've been through a couple cycles of this. You'll get some people that were popular that'll just sort of disappear, whether it's through scandal or something. Some of them will disappear. That's just the reality. Now, what are some of the differences? The main difference is scale. So it's bigger than it was in 2017, and it's slower than it was in 2017. And it's also affecting the rest of the market, and we seem part of a much bigger global trend. And that's a little different. We didn't have that in 2018, 2019. The rest of the economy was also doing well back then. So yeah, those are some of the differences and similarities. I, I do expect a lot of the same sort of behaviors to happen. Everything will like drop and people forget about a lot of this stuff. People swear it off, and then it'll start coming back in a couple of years, and then I mean things will change again. It's a cycle. It's going to happen again.
That's a narrative that we see a lot right now, especially, is the idea that this downturn is different because there is a recession and rate hikes going to levels that Bitcoin has never experienced. How much validity do you give to those types of ideas having an impact or influence on Bitcoin in the short and longer term?
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't been through this, and I don't know the future. I don't have a crystal ball. But yeah, I mean, the temptation every time is to say that this one's the most important, this is the most crazy, or we've never had this before, this is unprecedented, or whatever. But if you study history, it's never like that. I mean, every single election, it's the most important election of our lifetime. It's the most like that. That's just high time preference behavior. I wouldn't put too much stock in the sort of like doom scenario. Just stay humble, stack sats. Is it really that hard?
I like that. That's the motto, right?
Yeah.
I want to switch gears now. We've talked about the collapse in price of Bitcoin, the crypto shitcoin bubble that is collapsing much faster. I've brought up and highlighted the recession. We're seeing it play out in the stock market in particular. Where we really haven't seen the contraction, and this segues into your recent song sheet, is the real estate market. talk to us a little bit about just what you're seeing in the real estate market that just makes you just so uninterested in it.
It's not that I'm uninterested. Certainly, my wife is very interested. She wants a good home for our kids and so on. But I do think that it's a fiat possession. It's not really yours. It's you have use of it with the government's permission. And to some degree, this is how it works pretty much everywhere in the world, including like communist countries. I had Yunmi Park on my podcast a while back, and she was saying, okay, like I was saying, how does property even work? Like, how do you have a home or whatever? She's like, well, the government gives you a house, and they could take it away at any time. But then, like, you sort of make backroom deals with other families if you want to move to their house and they want to move into yours, and then you can swap them, or they give you some money for yours, and then you can pay money for it. It's all sort of like done in a backroom way. But I don't think our system is that different. You don't actually own the land. It's all sort of like leased to you by the government, and it's dependent on you obeying whatever they say. So if you start using the property in a way that's not zoned for, or if you happen to be unlucky and are in the pathway of an oil pipeline that they want to install, they can take it away by eminent domain. So in that way, I don't think it's really a possession as much as it is a rental from the government. Yet the ironic thing is that it continues to go up in value along with fiat money because it's treated differently than other assets. We have these things called mortgages, which are newly printed money coming into the economy. So they're at the front of the line on the Cantillon effect that people have access to as long as you have a good credit score and income and so on. That's the sort of like carrot that's been used, and as a result, it's gone up in value because of its scarcity and because of its front of the line Cantillon effect. And it's caused all sorts of distortions in the economy. It's caused a lot of fiat building. So lot of developers that just want to get as many things built as possible as quickly as possible so they can go and sell it, rather than custom built homes that people actually want, because it doesn't come from anyone's savings. It comes through loans. So you have worse quality architecture. And one of the things that Will and Parker told me at Unchained Capital was they specifically looked for a building that was built before the Federal Reserve, and they moved into this beautiful building, and Bitcoin Commons is there, and it was built in like 1906 or something, and it's gorgeous because it's made out of stone. A lot of the newer stuff, it's not expected to last that long because it's made out of wood. Like residential homes, especially, they get rebuilt like every 25 years, and that's sort of like the degeneration of real estate that we're seeing. And yeah, that's essentially what I wrote about, what I think might happen under Bitcoin standard and so on.
It's pretty crazy how. Oh, go ahead, Kim. I was going to say I had a random shower thought a couple days ago, and I was thinking like, oh man, the government subsidizes mortgages, and this idea that everyone should own a house or multiple houses as part of the American dream so extensively. Like, what if we lived in a world where the government did the same thing for loans to buy Bitcoin? Like, what if it was like you get like a 2 to 3% loan, 30-year loan just to buy Bitcoin? Like, what would that even look like? I couldn't come up with a good answer.
Yeah, well, obviously, a lot more people would buy it, and so,
Of course,
right?
But I mean, like, what would the second and third order effects be of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, clear one is price would go up, and a lot more people would use Bitcoin to transact and so on. But yeah, there's a significant amount of government intervention into the real estate market. But one of the things that I wanted to include in the article that I didn't get to is that you only qualify for a mortgage if you do things a certain way, right? So if you're self-employed, it's near impossible to get a conforming mortgage. If you're employed by somebody, then it's a lot easier. and you have to have a good credit score, which means that you have to use credit cards and things like that in order to build up your credit score. So they make you really go into the fiat system in order to get this benefit of, mortgages that essentially allow you to buy a house on leverage. And unfortunately, this is how most people store their wealth, is buying houses on leverage and paying it off over a period of years. Um, but the rules that are around it are designed to make you conform to the rest of what they want you to do. Be a cog in a fiat wheel, essentially, work for a company and do what they want you to do. And that feels to me like very much part of the social engineering of a society, and a lot of and this is what, like, socialist countries do, right? Like, you can this house is available to you for free, but you have to follow all our rules. This healthcare is available to you for free, but you have to follow our rules. This and this is the thing about government handouts, is that they always come with strings attached and are dependent on your compliance. And it's really sort of like a dishonest free. It's not free at all. And to some degree, real estate has that. It's You're not really affording it. If you think about it, it's the government giving you an 80% of the value of your house loan in order for you to buy it, and that's a benefit. That's not very different than um, the government like subsidizing anything else. That's the benefit that you're getting for housing. Now, a lot of people like it, but they don't see the second and third order effects of housing prices going crazy, and it being especially sensitive to inflation and so on. But they ignore that because, hey, I have a house and I can get it, and I could get more than I can afford because they're very high time preference. And it's a sad reality. And yeah, if anything else were subsidized this way, it would also go up like crazy.
One thing that I was sorry to say it like this, JB. I was a little disappointed in you, man. I feel like you held back in this article because you make no mention of the introduction of private equity into single family homes that we've seen since COVID. And I'm talking specifically about companies like BlackRock that are just going into certain communities. Like, they're not going into the nice neighborhoods. They're going into the middle and lower class single family home communities and just buying house after house, only to then become the landlord. And my fear is that this cycle, even if we see a housing market collapse, this cycle, unfortunately, BlackRock will just prop up the housing costs for those lower cost homes and still price out people. Do you have any concern about the way private money is entering the housing market? Or do you actually think that private money entering the housing market could actually help separate it from all these government regulations that we see?
Well, so the private money is going there for a reason, right? The reason why they're going there is because they want to store their value too. And real estate and stocks are two of the very good ones. Now, ideally, they would go and buy like a lot of property in the Hamptons or something. Those tend to appreciate a lot. The thing is, it's very, very difficult to get those. So what they have another strategy. Let's just go and buy up large tracts of land with all of this government printed money that we get access to through shadow banking, right? Like that's what they're doing. So now, like, is there some sort of like agenda behind this to oppress poor people or whatever? I don't know if there necessarily is, but is that the effect that it's going to have? Absolutely, because they are the Cantillon winners, right? If you are an investment bank, if you have access to shadow banking, you can get 50x leverage on your money. And guess what? You can go and buy lots and lots of property that's going up very, very quickly and make a killing because you're doing all this on leverage anyway, as long as it goes up. Now, the bigger question is what happens if there's a crash? Because, oh boy, like if BlackRock owns like all of this land and all of these houses, and the real estate market crashes, they can't pay, the mortgages because the people renting them can't pay rent or something like that. What do you do? Right? Like, and maybe that's part of their strategy, is to put themselves in a position where politically you can't afford to not bail them out. Because if you have poor and middle class people living in your homes that are paying a particular rent, and they can't pay the rent, then you say, government, we can't pay you back because these poor people can't pay the rent. Then with some justification, the government is going to bail them out and say, we're helping all of these poor families in these communities. So, I mean, in a way, maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. Now, I haven't looked into this too deeply, and this is all just sort of like speculation on my part. But these are the incentives that happen when you have these, giant capital allocators. They have to do something with the money. They're really, like, they probably at that point thought that stocks were overheated. There wasn't really a bond market to invest in. What else do you do, right? Like, you go and buy houses. It kind of makes sense to me.
I'm trying to find it, and we need to do, I think, a little bit more digging. I genuinely want to know if BlackRock is buying these homes though with a mortgage, or if they're just doing all cash buys. Because if they're just buying it all cash, like, fuck it, you can't pay your rent. All right, bye. You're evicted. On to the next person. We don't care. Our money is parked here anyways, and we're fine. We don't need your monthly subscription fee to BlackRock Housing. We'll just get someone else to come do it.
Oh, they're almost certainly buying it on leverage. Like, it would be very difficult to buy on cash because, well, you got to remember, all of these investment banks, they operate with actually very little cash. They get loans and multiply effects and stuff like that. So if they had already made the money, it's going into their own homes or whatever. They're getting, the $30 million mansion in the Hamptons or whatever. Actually, I'm not even sure that's enough to buy a mansion in the Hamptons these days. They get paid out as bonuses or whatever. That's where the actual cash goes. So if they're buying anything, like, just the way the MO of all of these investment banks, it's never straight cash. It may be as the transaction, but there's some leverage at some end, and maybe they can get better rates than the rates that they would get through like a direct mortgage loan. But there's some loan in there somewhere that backs all of this.
I want to talk a little tangentially now on the housing market. Again, not something necessarily in your song sheet. There's a point to what I want to say. Airbnb doing the stupidest thing possible and saying no more houses, no more house parties can be rented through our platform. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've literally only ever used Airbnb to throw myself a party, obviously. But what I kind of want to get a sense of is Airbnb, and also a company like Uber, introduce this idea of a sharing economy. However, like Uber especially, and I haven't done this digging on Airbnb, but I'm very interested to see what I'll uncover over the weekend. Like, Uber never made money. And the only reason they ever showed a profit was because they continued to raise funding rounds and made that money look like it was an actual revenue stream without realizing, like, other parts of your business have to make money. I fucking despise Airbnb. The fees they charge, insane. Zero customer service and support. Like, truly one of the worst places you can go to rent a house, rent or find a place to stay. Like, go get a fucking hotel. Stop using Airbnb. And their business model is teetering and slowly falling apart. And I want to know if these ideas of this, hey, you have a house, but feel free to just like rent it out for a weekend and like do this, or you have a car, and like people started making careers out of being an Uber driver or owning a bunch of properties on Airbnb. Like, we see that video that goes around of, oh, I have 100 properties, or I have 280 rental properties valued at this amount. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't own any of that. you just continue to lever up and you have an insane amount of debt. So I just wanted to lay all of these sort of facts and points out and ask, where is the fiat mentality here that we need to fully get rid of to either fix these systems or outright just get rid of this idea that the sharing economy probably doesn't actually work?
Well, the main thing there, I think, with the economics is that so much of it has been subsidized by newly printed money via VCs, via LPs that get access to Cantillon money or whatever. But ultimately, it's all subsidized, and in a way, this is what I would call bread and circuses. And if you're not familiar with what that is, the Romans during second, third, fourth centuries, they would give out free bread to the people and run gladiatorial games in the Colosseum. These were called bread and circuses to quell the population and stop them from rioting, from having a revolution or overthrowing the government. In many ways, I see Uber, Airbnb, stuff like that as bread and circuses. They're fiat subsidized, so you can go to another city for a little bit cheaper, and it's a new toy to play with, and it's all subsidized. Cell phones are very similar. There is like literally a government program to give you a cell phone if you don't have one and stuff like that. But yeah, it's that's where a lot of the economics come into play. One thing that you mentioned about Airbnb, how you kind of need permission and so on, like Airbnb's policy of not letting you throw house parties or whatever. That's like they become kind of a second central authority now, haven't they? It used to be you could do whatever you want with your property. Now with like local laws and stuff that say no, you're not allowed to rent it out on Airbnb. Who are you to tell me that, right? Like, it's my property. How come I can't do it? Yet this is what fiat possession is. You don't actually own the property. You have use of it with their permission, and you need their permission to rent it out on Airbnb. So there are entire, lots of places where you can't rent it out at Airbnb. And similarly, it looks like Airbnb will impose their own controls and say you're not allowed to do house parties now. And they can kind of do that. They're now a central authority because they're this trusted third party broker here. What I think will eventually happen is that you'll get sort of like a distributed sharing economy, and this is going to take some time, but I think the Lightning Network is going to be a good place to do that. You just need a marketplace and a reputation system. Now, both things are pretty hard to build, but the tech to do it exists, and getting the UX correct and getting the momentum and network effects that's what takes a while. So if we do it that way, I think we'll see what the actual price people are willing to pay for, a night somewhere is, or to drive to get a ride somewhere, or to borrow your car for a few days or whatever. But yeah, currently they're controlled by these centralized entities.
Jimmy, I want to give you the mic for one final thought. I will say, of your 10 ideas coming to real estate, the one I kind of actually wouldn't hate to see, I know it's fiat, no money down, cash back to buy a condo. Yeah, sure, go ahead. Feel free to just give me more cash that I'll spend on Bitcoin. Also, like, I'm so flabbergasted. Everyone who is watching or listening in Los Angeles, it is June 30th today. Go fill up your fucking gas, or California, go fill up your fucking gas tank. Because for whatever godforsaken reason, Gavin Newsom actually thinks that giving us a quick little $350 check is enough to offset the fact that they're raising gas prices again tomorrow. So go fill up your gas tanks tonight.
Wow, I guess it's getting really, really expensive. Yeah, the cashback, no money down. That's like a tactic to increase sales, right? To get more people to buy something that isn't that popular or whatever. So, car dealers will use that, right? No cash back, no money down, whatever. I think at some point you're going to get that with real estate because, I'm guessing that they're overbuilding at this moment because the housing market was just so heated over the past year that the overbuilding will come to fruition somewhere. This is, I kind of say it in jest because it would make, it would put the demand for housing like that through the roof because, you can burn your credit score for, a bunch of money and, get to live in it and stuff and have like some upside on the price of the house. Like it would be kind of crazy. But that's sort of like the next level sort of thing that they're going to need to do to sort of incentivize people to buy bigger houses or whatever. Because a lot of people, first of all, don't qualify for it, and in which case they're probably not able to, pay back the loan. And the people that are, a lot of them are satisfied with their house and don't want to spend more money, but you put incentives like this out, then maybe they will. So, these are the things that we have to think about because these are the things that are coming, right? Like real estate is just so important to the US market. And, what happens when it collapses, I don't know.
Jimmy, I'll give you one last final word, and hopefully this one's a little bit more, a little less depressing.
My articles are all depressing, but yeah.
That's not true.
Touche.
Well, the main theme of my articles is always, like fiat ruins this, Bitcoin fixes this, basically, right? That's what all my song sheets are about. The final word here is that you don't need to do things on leverage, and go back to doing things the right way. Save up and then go buy stuff. And this is the behavior that Bitcoin incentivizes. Save up and then go buy stuff. You'll appreciate it a lot more, and you'll demand more of the people that are taking your money if it's not coming from somebody else. If it's coming from your savings instead of 80% from the bank or the government or whatever, then it's going to be a lot easier, right, to demand more and get higher quality stuff. And this is the thing. It's like it's not just devaluation of real estate. It's devaluation of everything in your life. Like I was talking to a friend of mine that owns a home. I think that was built in like 2004 or something. Saying like they just built this so shoddy. Everything's like falling apart. You're not going to be able to demand more when you're getting a loan. That's just how it is. But if you're paying out of your savings, you have a lot more leverage, and losing that leverage of having your own money, it's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, like just how much power that gives you. There's a lot more that you can get if it comes from money that you already have and not money that you are pledged to go make. So yeah, that's a plea to all of you to start saving and not taking out loans to buy everything.
You heard it from Jimmy. You heard it from all of us. Stop buying on leverage. Guys, I think that's a wrap for our episode for today. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. As a reminder, we're going to be doing a Spaces to go over the Bitcoin Magazine Pro monthly report tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. So we will not be sharing our beautiful faces. Sorry. And then, of course, in about an hour, we're going to have our Honk Honk Hodl Spaces going over the cover story of the most recent issue of the Bitcoin Mag. So be sure to come join us over on Twitter in about an hour. Anything else?
No, man. Thank you so much for joining us, Jimmy. As always, love hearing your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right. Take us out.